An entitled crazy woman jumped into my car while I was on the street and demanded that I give her a ride home as she was desperately in need of a ride. But instead of kicking her out or getting the police involved, I decided the path of least resistance was just to go along with it and do exactly as she says, which in retrospect was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so I was at a stop sign around lunchtime when a woman on the corner came running over to the passenger side of my car, screeching about needing to get home. I was driving a convertible with the top down, and she didn't wait for an answer. She just swung a leg over the door and plopped herself into the passenger seat, saying that she'd give me $5 for gas. She then told me that she lived in a nearby low-income public housing project. Now, I knew where it was about a mile and a half away, and she was pretty tweaky, but somehow seemed fairly harmless. She never even glanced at me, didn't seem to be plotting something, and never said another word. And here comes the part where you can probably give me a lot of crap. But I figured it was just easier to go a mile and a half out of my way than to deal with the drama of trying to get her out of my car. My backup plan for carjackings is just to drive into the first telephone pole I see or rear-end the first police car that I spot. I mean, it's better to deal with the aftermath of that than have your body dumped into an alley. So I get to the housing project and it was broad daylight, and I was right in front of the main entrance with people around, so I didn't feel in any danger. She then hopped out and ran off. Now, I wouldn't have taken the $5 even if she had offered it, which she didn't, by the way, but mostly I was pissed that she left the passenger door open as far as it could go. So I got out to go around to close it when an older guy in a silver pickup pulls up. He put his passenger window down and asked me if I knew that woman, and asked me if I was okay. I replied by saying, "Oh, I have no idea who she is, but yeah, I'm fine." He then explained that he had been coming down the street behind me when he saw that woman jump into my car. He followed me to see if anything sketchy was going to go down, and I gotta say, I was pretty stunned by the thoughtfulness. I then told him, "Wow, thanks. That was a pretty awesome thing to do." He then said to me, "Oh, I would have punched that lady right out of my truck." He then pointed a finger at me and sternly lectured me like I was one of his kids. Don't ever do that again. Now, of course, he was absolutely correct, and if it ever does happen again, let's hope it doesn't, I might just take his advice on the punching part. But seriously, just try to imagine the entitlement of jumping into a stranger's car because you needed a ride. Honestly, if she had picked the wrong vehicle, it could have turned into a lot worse of a situation for her. Oh my gosh, the original poster's crazy. There is no way I would ever go along with this. I would have done what that guy did and been like, "Oh yeah, we're about to start fighting if you don't get out of my car." Like, that's some crazy talk. There's no way that's appropriate, and oh my gosh, I can't believe you went along with it. You mean to tell me that it's way better for you to be like, "Oh yeah, we'll just drive a mile and a half," instead of, oh, I don't know, getting her out of my car? Like, dude, what's happening right now? That's some crazy talk. So I know what I would have done in that situation, but what would you have done? Leave a comment down below. We would love to see what you have to say. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for getting upset at my friend who literally always complains anytime we go to a restaurant? Because seriously, I am so sick of hearing this, and at this point, I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that this isn't a huge deal, but I kind of lost it on one of my best friends this morning for constantly complaining every time we go to a restaurant. I've known her for about 5 years, and literally every time we go to a restaurant, she complains about waiting. Now, here's the thing. We have rarely had to wait an unreasonable amount of time. If the server isn't at our table within like a second, she'll say, "Oh my god, what in the world is taking so long?" Or she'll be like, "Where is our server at?" Or she'll be like, "Oh, why is our food taking so long?" Or some kind of iteration of that. And mind you, it's only been like a few minutes. In the last 5 years, I can only think of maybe one situation where the complaints were actually warranted, and she has never really been rude to a server besides maybe not saying thank you. It's usually at least one comment at every restaurant we go to, and we used to live together and eat out together very frequently. Today, we went to breakfast and sat down, and she says her usual speech of, "Oh, where's the server at? We've been waiting forever," when we've literally been there for a few minutes tops. At this point, I kind of got mad at her and I said, "You always do this at every restaurant we go to. You need to relax. We've hardly been waiting and they're doing the best they can." And when I said this, she kind of yelled at me and told me to calm down because it's not that big of a deal. And sure, maybe I shouldn't have said something, but I don't really know at this point. I'm just so fed up. So am I the jerk? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Yeah, that's one of those friends where I'd be like, okay, okay, let's just order food and bring it back to one of our houses because I don't want to sit in a restaurant with you. Because that kind of impatience is like super irritating and I know I would go crazy. But regardless, no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think you were being completely reasonable. And the fact that your friend freaked out and tried to like be like, oh wow, calm down, you're getting so mad. Like in my opinion, she's just projecting and that is actually her problem and not yours. Am I the jerk for kicking out my friend's neurodivergent friend that they brought to my house after they nearly destroyed my $3,000 hearing aids? Because right now I'm pretty pissed off and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my friends have this one friend that they bring along who is on the spectrum and high functioning. They can drive, live independently, clearly make friends, and holds down a job. So personally, I think that they can understand and respect boundaries. They have this annoying and disgusting habit of burping very forcefully, and it is so loud. And I have a sensitive nose and it really smells bad. Now, I don't care that they do that, but when this is in my literal personal space, less than 3 feet away, that is a serious issue. Now, I told them several times, don't do that when you are literally facing me and talking to me. Don't even do that if you're looking in my direction or eating right next to me, you know, with an entire plate of food being passed around. But the end of my patience was then met when I had a gathering and my friends invited this person. Now, this friend came in and I was warm to them, and then when I go to the bathroom, I come back looking for them to tell them that we are eating dinner. And lo and behold, I find them playing with my hearing aids that I put in a device to dry them out since it was raining. Now, I literally need those for work and my safety, and other people playing with, let alone wearing them, is unsanitary. Well, I flipped out and I told them to put those down. But you know what they did? They burped in my face laughing, saying they were sorry, and then they tried to hug me. They dropped one of their hearing aids on the floor and almost spilled their drinks on it, and the puddle was barely touching it as I grabbed it. And mind you, these are $3,000 each. I then told this friend to let me go, and it was here that my friends were trying to get me to understand that this friend has trouble with these social cues. But here's what I said in response. Look, I'm allowed to decide what I put up with in my own personal space and who handles my medical devices. Anybody who can hold down a job, make friends, and live alone should be able to respect boundaries. I don't care if they're on the spectrum, that literally just doesn't mean anything on this. Well, my friends then left with this person, and I've been back and forth with one of them about this entire scenario. So am I the jerk here? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk, but I guarantee you the rest of those idiots are just justifying whatever crappy behavior this person does. Seriously, they burped in your face, they tried to hug you and say, oh, I'm sorry, all before dropping your $3,000 hearing aids. Like, are you kidding me right now? This is absolutely unacceptable and there is no good excuse. And no, in case someone's wondering, being on the spectrum does not mean you get a free pass for being a weirdo. And burping in someone's face and just being disgusting, as well as violating their personal space and touching their belongings, like that's inappropriate and you absolutely deserve to get called out. So honestly, if these people really want to try and act like, oh wow, this is like a really unacceptable thing, they don't understand social cues, then maybe they should stay home and start to learn them, because the way they acted is completely out of line. My manager said that no phones are allowed during work hours, and despite the fact that I think this rule is incredibly stupid, I decided to maliciously comply, which eventually caused our entire server system to go down in a spectacular fashion. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work IT support for a medium-sized company. We've always been allowed to have our phones at our desks, and sometimes family emergencies happen or doctors call back or whatever. As long as we aren't scrolling social media all day, no one really cares. This new manager comes in last month, sees one person checking a text message, and then just loses it. They then send out an email. Effective immediately. No personal phones during work hours. They must be left in your car or in your locker. This means 9 to 5, no exceptions. Anyone caught with a phone will be written up. So I think to myself, okay boss, you got it. The thing is, our manager works from home 3 days a week. And when server issues pop up after hours or on the weekends, why don't you guess how he contacts us? That's right, he uses our personal phones. We literally don't even have company phones. Friday afternoon at about 4:45 p.m., we have a major server issue. Now this is something that I see and I could fix it in like 10 minutes, but my phone is in my car per the company policy. So I calmly finish my work at 5 o'clock and I just straight up walk out. By the time I get to my car and I check my phone at 5:15 p.m., I have 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly panicked text messages from my manager. The server has been down for 30 minutes and multiple departments can't do anything. I then call him back and I say, hey, I just got back to my car and I saw your calls. Is everything okay? Well, at this point, he is furious, asking why I didn't answer. I then reminded him about the no phones policy. He says that's different. This is an emergency. But I point out his email said no exceptions, and I was just following policy to avoid a write-up. Well, on Monday morning, we get a new email. It said the following: personal phones are permitted at desks for emergency purposes only, meaning that everything went back to normal and that this manager literally changed the rules rules for no good reason. Yep, I love this so much because micromanaging managers like this are so stupid. They're wasting people's time and they make life so much more difficult. So good for you for getting back at them because they definitely needed to learn this lesson. Am I the jerk for not canceling my long-standing plans just so I could go to a barbecue at my grandparents' house that I found out about literally last week? Because right now my mom is saying that I'm being selfish and at this point I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my wife and I made plans back in January with a group of friends to go to a beer festival in the mountains. My father-in-law has a rental property in the mountains which we reserved for the weekend and we all got tickets to the festival. It's 3 families and some other friends, so about 9 people in total. The festival is Labor Day weekend and my grandparents invited us and some other family to a barbecue that weekend, but we won't be able to attend because we're doing the beer festival. I texted my grandpa and I let him know that we wouldn't be able to make it because we already had plans that weekend, and he said that he understood and that it was no problem. But then my mom texted me asking why we couldn't come, and I told her exactly why. She then told me she's very disappointed in me and that I need to make this barbecue a priority and that I should cancel the plans to go to the beer festival. She then goes on to guilt trip me, saying that my grandparents are in their 80s and that we won't have many more opportunities to get together. For context, we live in the same city and state as my grandparents, and we see them about 2 to 3 times a month at a bare minimum. She told me a beer festival is not a good reason to blow off my grandparents and that I need to reconsider my priorities. I then told her I couldn't cancel and that the house is booked and that the tickets are paid for. I then told her that if it was just our family and no friends going, then we would forego the festival and come to the barbecue. But I really just don't think it's fair to our friends to cancel a long-standing plan for a barbecue that we literally just found out about. Not to mention telling them that they would either have to eat the cost of the tickets or find a different place to rent. I told my mom that if it was any other weekend or even Monday of the long weekend instead of Saturday, that we would be there and we're not blowing them off. It's a scheduling conflict, but even still, she disagrees and she is still very pissed off at me. So am I the jerk here? Because right now I'm so confused. No, you're not the jerk. This is so stupid. This barbecue came out of nowhere. Meanwhile, you've been planning this for a while. And I just love the fact that she's trying to guilt trip you by being like, oh, they're gonna die soon. We're not gonna have many more opportunities to get together as a family. And it's like, dude, we live in the same city. What are you talking about? I see these people all the time. It's not like you're neglecting them. Like, what's going on right now? This is so stupid. So no, of course you're not the jerk. Your mom's being irrational and this is absolutely out of line. Am I the jerk for forcing my in-laws to use a toilet like everybody else instead of urinating in a jug in my home? Because they say they literally don't want to walk all the way upstairs to use the bathroom and would rather use a jug that they got from Amazon that they delivered to my house. Because right now I feel like I'm going crazy and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my in-laws are visiting my wife and I this week, and this trip was short notice, so they'll be staying at our home. Our guest bedroom that they will be staying in is in the basement of our house. It's spacious, it's clean and dry, but the only issue is that it does not have a bathroom associated with it, meaning that you have to walk up the basement stairs and halfway across the house just so you can get to our guest bathroom. Now, before arriving, my in-laws were complaining that it was too far of a walk to get to the bathroom from the basement. Now, we're offering them free lodging, so I figured they would just have to deal with it. However, yesterday we got an unprecedented Amazon package. My wife opened it up and pulled out a strange plastic container. I joked that it looked like one of those medical devices where you urinate in this jug, and the joke was on me because that's exactly what it was. My in-laws had ordered a device for them to urinate into instead of going to the bathroom upstairs. I told my wife absolutely not and that they had to use a toilet. Now, it's important to note that my in-laws are very healthy. They are able-bodied people and there is zero reason other than laziness for them to use a device like this. My in-laws arrived later yesterday night and we confronted them about their plan to urinate in the jug. They then joked about the device and they asked me, well, what else are we supposed to do? Use a litter box? And it's like, no, go upstairs and use the bathroom. Are you kidding me? Well, they're now complaining about having to go all the way upstairs. And I'm pretty sure they are secretly using a jug to go to the bathroom. And I'm telling you, I'm gonna lose my mind if I find out that they are using it down there. So am I the jerk for asking them to use a toilet like a normal human being? Because what they're trying to do is honestly blowing my mind. Okay, I gotta be honest here. The second anyone says, oh yeah, we're gonna pee in a jug instead of going upstairs. Sorry, but that's too far of a walk. Like the second I hear anything like that, I'm gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna go to a hotel right now. Like this is not even up for discussion. The toilet is there for a reason, people. We're not living in colonial times. Like what's going on right now? Either go to the bathroom in the proper space or get out of my house. Like these people had the audacity of being like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna pee in a jug instead of going upstairs. Like the order from Amazon is the best reason for like, oh yeah, this was super premeditated. So they literally weren't joking. They were like, oh man, that's too far of a walk, so I'm gonna pee in like, oh, I don't know, maybe a jug instead. So yeah, I would either put my foot down or tell them to leave because this is insane. And the fact that anyone would actually think that's a solution is really crazy to me. Am I the jerk for stealing back some Pokemon cards that my fiance's nephews literally keep stealing from my daughter? Because right now I am literally at my breaking point and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to set the background, my fiance and I have 3 children. And sometime last year, my daughter, who we will call Summer, started collecting Pokemon cards that her biological dad would gift her during visitation. For reference, Summer is 8 years old, and I haven't really kept up with Pokemon as I've aged, but I collected coins as a kid, and I love the idea of helping my daughter grow her collection as well. I've also supplemented the collection from lucky Goodwill finds. It is about 5 binders worth of cards, with cards from between 1995 all the way to 2018 generally, and some are very rare. Well, my sister-in-law asked my fiance if we could babysit her 2 sons, her 8-year-old son by the name of Peter and her 7-year-old son by the name of Paul, and she wanted us to do this while they were out of town for the weekend, as she has to pick up her husband's nephew for something that's going on. Now, I was not keen on this for a few reasons. First of all, Peter has to attend an alternative school for anger issues and outbursts, and though they have become less frequent, I wouldn't know how to handle it if something happens. Secondly, Peter has had issues in the past with stealing money from my fiance and I, and this is anytime we would leave cash out in our own room. His mom would then get defensive about it, but $10 was never something I'd die on a hill for, so usually I would just drop it. It literally just wasn't worth it. But third, Peter has also tried to steal my daughter's Pokemon cards in the past, or some other cards that I have. Now, I did take them back, but this really blemished my relationship with my sister-in-law just a little bit. Now, despite all this, I hope the weekend could go smoothly, as she really needed the help. So my fiance and I agreed. However, last night while I was at work, Summer called and asked if she could give her Pokemon cards to Peter, and I could hear Peter whispering in the background when she said this. Well, I was very clear in saying no, because I couldn't advise if there would be a fair trade or if he would take the more valuable cards. Later on, I asked my daughter if she really wanted to give him the cards, and she finally said no. Well, this morning while tidying up my daughter's room, I saw that all the Pokemon binders were out. Well, I had a bad feeling, so I opened them up and I discovered that half the collection is missing. The binders were full, but now there were empty pages, and there were scattered cards missing. And when I saw this, I was so pissed off. I then went to Peter's backpack and I found cards from another game, as well as my daughter's full rock collection and a massive plastic bag with a bunch of Pokemon cards dumped in it. Well, I took everything back and I sorted my daughter's cards from Peter's, even though I was just going by the cards' print dates, as Peter only had cards from like 2022 and beyond. And I then put the sorted cards in a lunchbox. Now, I told my fiance about this at the time, but Peter and Paul have noticed their card stash is much lighter and started whining, saying that their aunt gifted them some older cards, but now they're missing. But honestly, I am so sick and tired of them thinking that they can just steal whatever they want from our house. So seriously, am I the jerk for not giving them any cards back, even if some of them are actually theirs? I'm worried they'll complain to my sister-in-law, but at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, if this is not the final straw to never let these kids over ever again, then I just don't know what is. Like seriously, this is so annoying. These kids are little brats and they're obviously stealing from you and your family. But to answer your question, no, of course you would not be the jerk. Who knows how many times these idiots have stolen from you? And now they have the audacity to be like, oh wait, no, don't do that. I was gifted these cards, you have to give them back. Like at that point, dude, I hope they do get the sister-in-law involved. Because if I was in this situation, I would love nothing more than to chew her out and say, look, I'm never helping you again. This is absolutely uncalled for. So no, you're absolutely not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong. And in my opinion, this is just a little bit of karma coming towards Paul and Peter, because these brats absolutely deserve this in my opinion. Am I overreacting after my roommate refused to turn on the air conditioning even though it's been over 100-degree weather? Because she says that because she's anemic, she doesn't want the AC on because it's uncomfortable for her. But right now, I feel like I'm losing my mind and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, I spent my first week in my freshman year dorm and things were going great until a few days ago. I was unable to get to sleep on a school night because my room was so hot. I mentioned this to my roommate and she said that she turned the AC off because she has anemia and it makes her cold. I try to be understanding, but we are currently in a huge heat wave in Arizona, and I'm not from here, so it already has been hard for me to adjust to the harsh temperature. I thought we had reached some kind of understanding, but then last night the same thing happened again. We're also on the 14th level, so it is impossible to open my window to let in some air, air because it would literally just be hot air. I couldn't go to sleep, so finally, after hours of suffering in silence, I texted her and I asked if the AC was on. Well, the message said that they received it and that they read it, and yet she simply didn't respond to me. I then asked again, but still I got no answer. I figured I'd try to deal with it in the morning, but when the morning came, she said that she had turned it off, but then said she would turn the AC on because she would be gone for most of the day, and I figured that that was that. She then texted me later, only after I'd asked if it was on, to say that she forgot to turn it on. Now, maybe she honestly just did, but the fact that she said that she had turned it on and told me afterwards that she did suggests that she wasn't being truthful. She has now been gone for almost the entire day, and it's reached up to about 100 degrees in my room. I can't go into her room because it's locked, and my RA cannot help me because it invades her privacy. I've now been forced to leave the room to go somewhere colder. She isn't sure when she'll be back, which means I won't be able to go in the room for a while longer. And I've got to be honest, this is really frustrating because she missed a mandatory meeting where we would have discussed these matters because she instead chose to talk to a friend on the phone. So am I overreacting for telling her that she needs to keep the AC on? I understand she has a health condition, but my RA said that she could put more layers on. Plus, she is controlling my side of the room as well, so I'm unable to have air conditioning in over 100-degree heat and 25% humidity. So seriously, am I at fault here? Because right now I'm really getting frustrated. Okay, there is no way I would ever put up with this, dude. I've got to be honest, I probably would lose my mind. Because seriously, they can put on more layers if they're really that cold. Don't make everybody else suffer just because of that. This must be like one of those situations where like the AC unit controls are on her side, and she's the one that controls it and says, okay, well, I'm just gonna turn it off. I have anemia, forget my roommate. I don't care if they're sweating to death, that's not my problem. Like, how selfish and entitled can you possibly get? Like, dude, what's going on right now? So if I was in your shoes, I would work with someone on campus to get this sorted out, because this really is insane in my opinion. Because what she's doing is very unsafe and could be hazardous to your health.
I'm a 21-year-old female and my mom just asked me to hook up with my stepdad. Seriously. She said that she would be in the room while we were doing the deed and she would be okay with it. I also have 4 younger sisters and I don't know how to tell them about this without bashing my parents. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My mom had me at 18 years old right out of high school. Long story short, my dad died at 19 while he was away at university. Then my mom remarried at 21 and had my sisters. My stepdad, we'll call him Scott, was the only father I've known. He's been a great father, nothing out of the ordinary, absolutely perfect parenting until I turned 19 years old. I remember Scott becoming a little more touchy than normal and a little too personal. He would offer me drinks, I declined, and would ask me about my private life after one too many glasses. I brushed it off because I thought maybe he was being a nosy father and just wanted to make sure his daughter wasn't doing the deed. Then this kind of continued to the point where my stepdad tried to kiss me last year. I told my mom and she just laughed and told me, "That's how he gets after too many drinks." I knew then that I had to make plans to leave, so I started saving up. After that incident, things died down a bit until my mom got pregnant at 39. It's a higher risk pregnancy, so she's on a lot of bed rest, taking extra care of herself per her doctor. A couple of weeks ago, my mom and Scott sat me down and told me her doctor said she should avoid doing the deed during pregnancy due to various health reasons I won't get into. Then they asked me if I could do the deed with Scott until she was able to do the deed with him again. Of course I said no. I was livid. I was crying. She told me that she'd be okay with it and that she'd be in the room as well. I told her that was even worse. What were they thinking? I have enough money for an apartment. I got approved. I'm signing my lease next week. My parents are ignoring me and the whole house is full of tension. My younger sisters don't understand what's going on and my mom told me not to say anything. But my sisters are smart and they know something is really up and won't stop asking me about it, especially the oldest. She came to me crying today and told me I better tell her what's going on. I didn't say anything. So, does anyone have any advice? What do I tell her? What do I say to the younger ones? How do I tell a 16-year-old about this without being inappropriate or bashing my parents? The original poster gave more information in a response to one of the top responses, which said, bashing your parents would be unfairly putting them down for something benign. What they've done is wrong and sick on so many levels. Forget about not wanting to be inappropriate because it's more important to prevent you from dealing with them, and it is highly likely that your other sisters will be subjected to this if they have not already, and they are younger and more easily victimized. You You could speak to your teen sisters privately and ask them if they've had any uncomfortable experiences with your stepdad, like him talking too much about adult things or making advances, and make it clear that you are a safe person to confide in. I would also reach out to a trusted family member or someone you can ask help from. The OP responds saying, last year when he tried to kiss me, CPS interviewed all the girls and the girls were very confused because their dad has never said or done anything to them inappropriately. My aunt, who is a child therapist, called them to begin with and talked to each girl and said that there were no signs of foul play, which upset her because she really hates Scott, but made her happy because he's done nothing to them. CPS said that this situation was like a roommate complaining about it because I'm not his biological daughter. My aunt has been fighting to make my mom leave for years, but since Scott is not hurtful to her or the girls and he makes a lot of money, she won't leave. But my aunt actually has mentioned that he's been manipulating her with kindness all of these years so she would be okay with him doing the deed with me when I became an adult, and it worked. My aunt and I don't think he's going to hurt the other girls, but you never know. We most likely will have to call the services again. And then in a separate response, my aunt and I are probably going to call again and try and get the girls out and with her, or my grandparents who want them to stay there. My concern is telling the girls I would be devastated if I was 16 and someone told me my dad tried to do the deed with my sister, so now I have to live with my grandparents. What do I say to her? Do I break her heart? Jumping into the future, there is a whole separate update. In the original post, basically my mom and stepdad asked me to do the deed with my stepdad. I declined, freaked out, and now I am leaving. My concern is for my sisters. My aunt did what she said she was going to do. She barged in with 3 other people, one of them a social worker friend of hers who was off duty, and my uncle. None of them are allowed at the house, so as soon as Scott found out they were there, he called the police. Before the police showed up, I told my 16-year-old sister and the 14-year-old what happened. The 16-year-old got angry at her dad. She was walking around the house ranting at her dad and crying. Eventually, she decided to come with my aunt and I, and then we would figure out where she could go from then on. However, the 2 14-year-olds did not believe me. They actually started laughing. They got angry and told me that I was trying to destroy our family, and how could you make up such a sick lie? It got to the point where they threw my and my 16-year-old sister's stuff out the window. By that time, the cops came and told my aunt, uncle, and the social worker that they had to leave the property. The social worker friend let the cops know everything that's been going on. The cops didn't care. They just cared about the noise and the trespassers. So I, my 16-year-old sister, my aunt and uncle, and their friend left. Very soon after, my grandparents came over and got the other 3 girls. After the 14-year-olds called them and came to their senses, I found out from my grandma that one of the 14-year-olds confronted her dad and he didn't deny anything. In fact, he called me a floozy and said that I shouldn't have had any problems doing what he asked. That's when they packed a bag and called my grandparents. My grandparents explained everything separately to the little one. She told my grandpa she prefers him to our dad because my grandpa doesn't yell at her. As much as that pained me, I hope it's enough to keep the girls and my grandparents for good. My 16-year-old sister is going to emancipate herself and stay with either our grandparents or our aunt. CPS was called, but it was my grandparents this time. I have multiple screenshots on my and my aunt's phone of my mother incriminating herself, so we will be able to file charges and hopefully get Scott on the offender registry. That way the girls can stay at their grandparents permanently. Also, to explain why aunt wasn't allowed over, because they hate Scott and know he's a creep. Many years ago, when I was about 13 at my younger sister's gender reveal party, my cousin, my uncle's daughter, who is trans, decided at university that she was a female and came back as a female. We all accepted and loved her, just the same except Scott, who got sloshed and lifted her skirt and said, "Do you still have your boy parts under there?" That's when my uncle beat him up and knocked over a couple of tables. From then on, half of my family wasn't allowed back at the house per a trespassing order. They knew then that he was an absolute perv, but I, as a young child, didn't fully comprehend it. So, what should I do? This is a horrifying situation. How can the mother be okay with this no matter what her excuse or rationale is behind her saying she's okay with it? From every angle, they make it very clear that Scott, the stepdad here, is only going after the 21-year-old stepdaughter, the OP, and that he's never done anything like that to the other daughters, the younger ones. But who's to say that he won't do that one day? And I know the people that showed up from the services said that, well, you're not biological, you're more of like a roommate, and they are his biological kids. But the difference is that he raised the OP. Isn't there some sort of fatherly bond that would be fostered during that time that would prevent you from doing this? And about the whole concept of being afraid to bash the parents or breaking the hearts of the other daughters, there was a good response that said, "You will never be the one to break her heart in this situation. It's your mom and stepdad who are breaking her heart. You are just the one who has to tell her. None of this is your fault. You are not responsible for the trauma inflicted on anybody here. It's much easier said than felt, I know, but I can't articulate how strongly I believe this. Their trauma will involve you, but it will never be because of you. You're a good sister, a really, really amazing sister. And I think that's the part that the OP is conflating. She's afraid to tell the sisters, or at least she was before the update, because she doesn't want to break their hearts, but this situation is not because of her. Even if it does involve her, even though that might feel like it's one and the same, it's not. I don't know if you can really ever get over that sort of betrayal from both your mom and your stepdad, if it could ever be normal again. And even after a few years pass, how can you go to a holiday event, see your mom, and just pretend like everything is normal when you know in the back of your head that she was basically just trying to sell you off to her husband? And probably the most shocking part of the whole thing is even after he gets caught, and he doesn't deny anything, he calls the OP a floozy and said that she should have had no problem doing what he asked. So even after all that, he still thinks that he's in the right. The situation is sad. I feel bad for the daughters. I hope they can stay with the aunts or the grandparents and not have to go back into that environment. But let me know what you would do if you were the OP in this situation. How would you handle something like this when it seems like most people aren't taking what you're saying seriously, referring to the protective services as they called, because you're stuck in this conundrum where you're considered a roommate, but your sisters haven't had anything happen to them, so they won't do anything. Where do you go from there? Let me know down below. My girlfriend of a year and a half just broke up with me to be with my roommate, and I just heard them through the wall. As the title says, we broke up. It was about 6 months ago, and it was semi-amicable. We broke up because she was developing feelings for my roommate. Admittedly, they are more compatible, and he's an upgraded version of me, so I can see why it happened. This isn't an evil thing. Both asked my permission to start dating, and they don't do any PDA, public displays of affection, while I'm around. I still consider them my friends, and I just want them to be happy. For the most part, they are quiet at night. If I really listen, I can hear what's going on, but generally, they save it for when they are alone, except for last night. We went out to the bar for his birthday, and they got pretty sloshed. I was the designated driver because I don't really drink. Anyway, last night we got home at close to 2 a.m. and all went to bed. I made sure they both got into bed, put water, Advil, and buckets out just in case. I then put my sleeping bags out for other people and did the same. As I was brushing my teeth, my ex walked in, hugged me, and said she was sorry. She thanked me for always being so nice, and she promised to help me find a new girlfriend when I was ready. When I finally got to bed, I could hear muffled talking, mostly about how great the night was. Then it got quiet, and then it started. I don't know how long it lasted, but it was louder than normal. I've been okay with the breakup until now. I'm glad they're happy, but last night I fell asleep crying. I woke up this morning, I made breakfast for everyone and started to clean up. Feel free to ignore this, I just needed to get this off my chest. I'm sad when I really think about the situation, but that's what I try not to do. Jumping into the future, there's an update. Taking everyone's advice, I announced that I was going to be moving out. My now ex-roommate pulled me aside and asked if it was because of his relationship. I told him yes, but I'm not going to make him sacrifice his happiness just for me. He decided to help me look for a new place, and we found one. It's a one-bedroom apartment that is closer to my work. My landlord is my ex-roommate's family friend. After my ex-roommate explained the situation, I ended up getting a slight discount on rent for the first year. My ex-roommate and ex-girlfriend and a few other friends helped me move in. I had a housewarming party and was specifically asked that I not prepare anything. 7 people came over with dinner, dessert, and drinks. My ex-girlfriend and my ex-roommate also cleaned up after everyone finished eating. My ex-girlfriend stayed a bit later than everyone and apologized for putting me through everything. She said she didn't really think about how it made me feel. She told me that she's talked to a few friends about finding me someone and that she had set up a blind date for me. It was great. We've gone out a few times since our first date. The past few weeks have been the best in a long time. I've never really realized how bad my situation was. Obviously, everything isn't perfect, and I still have to work on my self-esteem and standing up for myself, but I'm in an infinitely better position than before. So, was I the jerk for how I handled this? I don't think most people on earth would be that patient or that understanding or even that forgiving because he's obviously hurt. The girlfriend finally recognizes at the very end that what she did hurt him, and she said that she didn't really think about how it made him feel. That's just a tough situation. To be okay with living like that for 6 months. That's how long he was there before finally deciding to move out after his girlfriend left him for his roommate. Oof. To be honest, this guy does sound like he has some self-esteem issues. The fact that he said that this roommate is the upgraded version of him says a lot about how he sees himself and his own self-esteem, and hopefully he's able to work on that over time. But if this was you and it was your boyfriend or girlfriend that started dating your roommate, how would you deal with that situation? How would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I made my ex-boss lose $25,000 of his salary. I used to work at Wendy's as a manager. It was already a crappy job, but my general manager was nice and most employees were easy to deal with. All of this started when I was already working about 65 hours a week. I was offered a $100 bonus to work one of my only days off. I decided to do it, and later that week, before I had been paid, I was asked to come in again. I said this time I would like $150, as at this point I had worked almost 23 days without any days off. They said they'd do it, so I went in. Jump forward 3 weeks, I've been asking about my money for a while now. I am told by my general manager that I could speak to my district manager as he would be in later that night. The conversation goes like this. Me saying, hey, do you know what's going on with the bonus? I'm owed $250 with both the days. The district manager said, well, that's why I came here. The store's been having trouble making money. So basically, he's telling me that my performance isn't good enough. At this point, I'm working dinner rush and the whole night with me and 3 others, my girlfriend, best friend, and other friend that have grown close. The district manager says, your shift isn't making much money as the others. I'll tell you what, your drive time is higher. I respond and say, well, we're doing all we can. It takes extra time when we only have half the number of people with the same amount of customers. The district manager says, that ain't right. That's really no excuse. When am I going to receive my bonus? My district manager was a very sheepish man, so he is very obviously scared when he tells me this. He says, well, we can't give you a bonus until the revenue rises and drives the time going down. I am speechless at this point. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I grew up on the south side. You don't mess with people's money. A day passes and I've had time to collect myself and speak to my entire crew. Everyone agrees to walk out with me, so I call my district manager. The phone starts to ring, but then it cuts off. He declined my call, so I called him again and again and again. Finally, I just left him a voicemail. I said, look, Jacob, you need to talk to me. You have until 8:45 to call me back or all of night crew is done. At this point, it's 7:30. I go into my office and start watching my boss's email. She leaves it open and logged in. I figured he would probably email her before calling me. Around 20 minutes of watching this email and boom, an email pops up. It's titled, Emergency, Lonnie. This idiot put my name on the email, so of course I read it. Long story short, in the email was him trying to make sure my general manager was going to be ready to go to work. AKA, he wasn't going to call me or give me my money. So I get all my people together and we walk out, leaving everything out, all the meat, all the toppings, the fryer, everything. We left the Wendy's. The next day, I turn in my keys. About a week later, I'm called by my brother. I say, what's up? My brother says, Jacob lost all of his stores. He has to go back to Indiana. My brother worked at the store as well. If you don't know, district managers' pay is based on the amount of stores they have and how much they make. When he moved to Indiana, his wages got reduced from $65,000 a year to about $40,000 a year. All of this, just over $250. So, was I the jerk for planning a walkout on this Wendy's because my boss wouldn't pay me the money he owed me? Even if it ended up costing him $25,000. As soon as he said this all took place at Wendy's, I kept thinking about the "sir, this is a Wendy's" meme, but this isn't one of those cases where that applies. This is yet another situation where people try to save a buck and end up losing it all, when if they didn't have the money in the first place to pay out this bonus, then why would you tell him that he was going to get the money? To some people, that's the same thing as stealing, because at that point, it's his money. He did the hours, he did the work, and you told him he would get that extra money. So in order to save $250, cheating this guy out of his $250, they end up losing 100 times that amount of money, at least from the perspective of the district manager. Whoever owns those franchises could have lost a lot more. I've only ever seen a walkout happen once at a food place, and it was inside of a smoothie shop, and I missed all the context of what happened before, but when I walked in, I basically just heard some guy go, F this place, and he slammed his apron on the ground and ran out the door. I thought it was staged or was a joke or something, but that guy never came back. I guess it's it's just sometimes when you push people to their brink and they're communicating with you that, hey, this is too much, and you keep pushing them, sometimes they will snap. Let me know if you've ever had an experience like that, and if so, submit your story, or if not, let me know what you would do in the situation down below. Am I the jerk for canceling the entire trip after finding out that my husband hid my daughter's passports? My husband and I have been together for 3 years. He has 3 kids from his previous relationship. I have 1. She's the oldest at 17 years old. He's a dedicated man. He puts God first and loves everyone. My husband always complains that my daughter doesn't spend time with her step-siblings or him, but she has her reasons for that, and that is school, health issues, and work. She does her best to spend as much time with them as she can, but she, on the other hand, complains that her stepdad tells her to basically take on the role of a babysitter whenever she's with her step-siblings. My husband denied that and said that my daughter was making up excuses to not have to spend time with his kids. For this issue, I figured that a family trip is what the family needed to get together and spend more time around each other. My husband liked the idea, but said that his kids are now uncomfortable around my daughter because of her attitude and suggested that we let her stay home and have the house all to herself since that's what she always wanted. I told him it's best that we all go. He kept complaining until I snapped and I told him to stop. I booked, paid for the whole family. However, my daughter told me that she couldn't find her passport. We turned the house upside down looking for it, but we couldn't find it. My husband said maybe it was a sign from God that we should let her stay home so the trip wouldn't turn into a disaster. I ignored this comment, but later, while I was cleaning his office, I found the passport tucked away in the 3rd drawer under a ton of papers. I was floored by this. I confronted him with it, and he swore he had no idea why or how the passport got there. I checked the upstairs camera and saw him enter my daughter's room. That was it for me. I screamed my head off at him and then canceled the whole trip completely. He started arguing, saying that I overreacted and that he didn't want his kids to be miserable on the trip and that he was willing to apologize to my daughter if and when I reconsider my decision regarding the cancellation of the trip because my stepkids will be devastated. But I said it was final and that it was done. He became cold and distant and said that he wants to take some time to do some fasting and get some guidance from God about how he should deal with the disrespect and control that I had displayed lately. Am I the jerk for canceling it altogether? It sounds like the OP's observations about the stepdad are probably pretty spot on, that he just wants to use the OP's daughter to babysit his kids so he can do whatever he wants to do. The fact that he actually stole the passport and hid it in order to get what he wanted and then somehow still thinks that he was in the right is pretty concerning, because if a person like that can justify doing that, they can justify pretty much anything. It also seems like part of his justification for pretty much anything is saying that it's God's will. Him stealing and hiding the passport, oh, that's God's will, not his decision to do that to get what he wants. And at the end, he's only going to apologize if she reconsiders her decision. In the meantime, he's going to go see what God's will is by getting some guidance about how to deal with the disrespect. This just kind of sounds like a dangerous mindset to have in a partner that you're going to share your life with, the constant justification aspect of it. But maybe you see this totally differently, and if so, let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. My cheating students thought that they had me fooled, but in the end, they fell right into my trap. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I am a cancer researcher and a guest professor at a university school of medicine, teaching my specialty, imaging. Besides the usual acquisitions of medical images using MRI, CT, etc., imaging has a lot to do with image processing. Some days, I am just a glorified programmer/IT guy, and as anyone who has ever programmed anything will tell you, coding is a very personal activity. With enough experience, you can tell who wrote what just by looking at the lines. I'm also in my late 20s and I am not native to this country, and it is my first year as a guest professor. So some students look at me as this inexperienced, gullible foreign guy. As part of my module's grading, the students have to submit 2 reports that weigh 10% each of their final grade. These reports are about image processing and they have to code a fair bit. As usual, there are students that make an effort, some who do minimal work, and some that cheat and copy. As I was grading the reports, I noticed a small group of students who found reports from previous years online and literally copied and pasted those reports, changing only their name. It was a facepalm moment because those reports were not even good and they had a lot of errors. You see, in order to establish a baseline for my grading, I browsed previous year's reports so I knew what to expect from the students of this module. Naturally, I graded them all with a 0 and kept working my way through grading reports until I had left. Meanwhile, the students casually asked me in the halls, how are the reports? Of course, I can't comment on that until I release the grades. One time, this dude, who copied from another report 98% match on a plagiarism checker, asks me when I will release the grades and comes up with this story that he worked really hard on his reports, that his exam hasn't gone so well, so he's hoping that the grade on his reports are enough to get a pass. I mean, submitting another person's work as your own is very wrong, but it was an online submission and impersonal. Right now, he was just lying through his teeth and to my face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't lose my composure and decided to come up with a plan. I knew that my exam was the last exam of the semester, and that after that, the students usually go home or on family vacations while they wait for their grades to be posted online. So I graded the exams and input their grades into my Excel with their report grades. 4 students had 0 due to cheating on their reports, and if graded their reports with 50% of the max grade, they would barely fail the module, but they would fail nonetheless. So it was on. In order to be fair, I bumped everyone else's grades. A bunch of people with miserable reports ended up barely passing because of my grade bump, but even though the reports were bad, it was their own work and not copied from anywhere. You see, students are entitled to make an appointment to review their grades after publishing and before the grades are locked for the year. Basically, they sit with me, we go through their exam and reports, and their goal is to convince me to give them extra points and hope that they pass the module. I knew the cheaters would come. After all, they think they fooled me once already. They still have half the report's points to bargain for, so I just waited for their emails. Lo and behold, they write me the same day the grades go online, saying how hard they have worked on their reports and they don't understand how they only got a 50% and that they wanted an appointment. I was ecstatic. Sure, let's review your grades. Do you remember that my exam was the last one? Well, they were already on vacations, some very far away, and begged me for an appointment online. No can do. University policy. Moreover, you have 3 days to show up for your appointment, otherwise the grades are locked. Also university policy. So here they come, cutting their vacation short, catching planes, some spending hours in buses and trains to make it on time. I know what many of you are thinking. They come, I show them the plagiarism checker results, and reveal that I know it's not their work and send them on their way. Well, I considered that, but I had something better in mind. Those appointments usually take about 10 minutes. I show them their work with my notes on what's right and what's wrong, and then they try to find some inconsistencies in my grading and bargain for more points. I ain't giving you the opportunity. Mwahaha. So one by one, they sit with me individually and I go through their exams and reports. Remember that they copied the reports and copied bad ones with lots of errors? I ask questions, lots of them. Why did you do this? What is your reasoning for this? They don't know. It's not their work. They mumble random stuff because they don't know what to answer. Point by point, mistake by mistake, I explain why it was wrong, how it should be done, lecturing the same material that they had already been lectured on during class. I make it long. I make it boring. I make it painful. I spent hours with each one of them throughout those 3 days. They always came with the same, "I worked so hard on this," and a little smirk on their face because they thought that it should really be easy to fool me. The gullible foreigner again. As the hours go by and I am walking through the errors one by one, I could see their expression change. Little by little, their hopes of passing slowly being crushed. And when they realized that I knew they cheated and I wasn't going to give them any extra points, at this point they would just try to cut the appointment short and leave, but I wouldn't let them. "We need to finish the review of your grades. It's university policy." And I would just keep going, extending their misery for one more hour or two. It was legal torture, plain and simple. It was glorious. At the end, every single one of them left with a crushed soul look in their eyes and a fail in my class. They knew that I caught them, that I baited them, and they fell for it. They ruined their vacation and their family vacations, spent money to travel back and forth, wasted precious summertime, got bored to death, and have nothing to show for it. And next year, they will have to repeat the module with me. I hope you enjoy your summer. See you next year. For a little more context, this was in the EU, not in the US. I took the matter to my boss, who is their course director, and he told me not to report them because the university wants to avoid any kind of legal action at any cost. I couldn't even accuse them of cheating. For those that are worried about my bumping the grades thing, I made a judgment call to bump some of the grades of some students who had a good exam score and their report grade was pulling them down. They clearly knew the topics and studied. Their report was just not very good. So I decided that if it wasn't for the report, they would pass, to bump it up a bit to allow them to pass. Most of them went from failing at 49% to passing at 50% on their overall final grade. So was I the jerk for setting up this trap to waste these cheating students' summer? In this story, I'm just surprised that the original poster here would spend his own time to go through all of this. I get that he was striking back by making them having to fly during their vacations and interrupting their whole summer, and that's a lot bigger of an expense than just sitting for a few hours in a room where he was already at anyway. But still, it's wasting a lot of your own time. But I guess that's kind of how a lot of revenges go. You end up getting back at somebody even if you get hurt in the process. It seems like overall there are teachers that take cheating really personally, and there are ones that don't take it personally at all because they figure people are always going to be cheating. I'm guessing since he's relatively new to this school, he's taking it more personally than he would if he was teaching there for over 10 or 20 years. But with all that said, he did accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, even though, as we found out in the end, he kind of had his hands tied behind his back because he wasn't allowed to pursue the whole cheating accusation part of it. He was able to focus on why the work that they copied was insufficient. But it makes me wonder, if he wasn't able to pursue the whole cheating part of it and report them because the school's afraid of lawsuits, then what would happen if the thing they chose to copy was a perfect 100% flawless report? Would they just get away with it by default? Because it seems like a lot of this towards the end was a series of bluffs. And what I mean by that is that he was focusing on what was wrong with the report they copied without directly saying that they copied it. So if you were the teacher in this situation and you found out that your students had cheated, what would you do? How would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My girlfriend has been trying to get me fired from all my jobs. I am shaken. Please help me. I'm a 24-year-old male and I've been with my girlfriend, who's 29, let's call her Janice, for 2.5 years. I just finished my education when we started dating, and I have been doing all sorts of jobs since, sometimes 2 jobs at a time. I did this to expand my resume and gather job experience. I worked in cafes, bookstores, a library, a grocery store, and as an English tutor. Most of these jobs lasted about 3 to 5 months. My shortest stay was 2.5 weeks, my longest 8 months. But since I didn't have a hard time applying for new positions, I tried to block it out, though it was kind of eating me up internally. People called to complain about me. People left bad reviews about me. People used my employee Wi-Fi access to look up sketchy things on the internet under my name. Former employees called to inform them about me, right name and all, and much more subtle things too that I can't disprove. But I was too anxious to do anything about it. I just told my girlfriend. She comforted me. She supported me every time I got my life ruined by these people. But I kept going, though they kept finding me. Fast forward to this week. I currently hold a part-time position at a bakery. I've been working there for 2.5 months. It's going okay, but my manager approached me about something regarding our Google reviews. Someone was complaining about an employee, and their description of them could only really fit me. It was on a day where we were pretty short of staff, so I could have been the only person in the store on that day for all I know. Anyway, their review contained some pretty elaborate and nasty comments about me. This has happened on 1 or 2 of my jobs already. I told my manager that it was all pretty bogus and that someone had a vendetta against me, as it has happened before. She believed me and told me that she'll dismiss the comments. On my break, I checked out the review myself. Their username was kind of stupid. I'm not going to type it out here since I still work there, but I'll just call them McMyrtle, as it was in the same range of sounds kind of fake but not really. Anyway, I come home but I don't tell Janice about it. She has heard it all before, so I didn't see the point of complaining about yet another time I almost lost my position. We chat, all is well, and she leaves the room. Her phone is on the table and suddenly she gets a notification or an email of some sort from Google. I don't remember what it said exactly, but the pop-up read something along the lines of, McMyrtle, manager has responded to your review. My heart dropped. I've been trying to ignore it since. This was 2 days ago. It just fit in the picture of bad reviews. It fit in the picture of phone complaints my workspaces have received about me in the past. It fits in the picture of all the sketchy things that I've been fired for. Why would she do that though? I'm looking for an explanation. This literally can't be. She's the only thing keeping me sane. I don't know what to do. Jumping into the future, there is an update. Hello people who are still invested. A lot has been going on. First of all, yes, we broke up. That's why I'll be referring to her as my ex from now on. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. On Monday of the following week, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I told my ex I needed her booking account to book a train ticket to visit my dad for a few days. She complied, and when she was in the shower getting ready for work, I booked my ticket and started looking through her emails. After some digging, I found an email to herself which contained a spreadsheet file. I sent the file to myself, printed it out, and took a screenshot. Why? The spreadsheet contained about every single piece of information about me that there was. Numbers, emails, passwords, work times, colleagues, their numbers, social medias, as well as some emails and passwords that she used for accounts to ruin my life with. Everything was on there, conveniently stored for her to ruin my life as efficiently as possible. When she left for work, I decided it would be best to immediately pack my stuff. Nothing that mattered would be left behind. I felt like a wanted man, like I was being hunted despite nothing being seemingly out of place. I called my boss, told her I would be taking some time off from work, and headed out to see my dad. Needless to say, he was the sanity that I needed. I cried about everything I saw. I panicked for a whole 2 days straight about how my life was ruined and I didn't know what to do. He had to sleep on the couch in the guest room because I was so scared of my ex coming in. He handled it like a champ. I love you, Dad. He called the police, a lawyer, and most recently a therapist for me because I was in the most horrible state of my entire life. We're currently sorting out the legal stuff. I haven't talked to my ex except for letting her know that it was over and that she is a sick psychopath. My dad handled the rest. I changed all my passwords and I'm now looking for a place to live. Sorry for the brief update. My mind is tangled. So, what should I do? The most obvious question that I have a feeling the OP is going to want to go back and get some closure from is, why did she do this? A lot of people have put out theories, but it seems like the two most likely reasons are probably she wants him to be dependent on her. She is older, if that makes any difference. And maybe she feels like if she keeps stunting him over and over again, he can't, I guess, get away from her. I mean, his exact words were, "She's the only thing keeping me sane." And after seeing what she's done in order to create this situation, it's almost like she's engineered the whole thing so that she is the only one keeping him sane from his perspective. The other popular theory, if she's totally out of touch with reality, is that maybe she's convinced herself that she's helping him by getting him out of all these jobs that she doesn't deem to be good jobs. She might justify this by saying that she doesn't want him to spend years at an entry-level job when he could instead get a better job that's not entry-level, that pays more money, that has more prestige. And maybe she rationalizes it by thinking if she keeps pushing him out of all these jobs, eventually he'll land on a so-called better job. But this is really twisted. I mean, the guy's already dealing with anxiety because he can't figure out why this keeps happening to him. He probably feels like he's cursed. He actually says in the original post, "I was too anxious to do anything about it. I just told my girlfriend and she comforted me. She supported me every time I got my life ruined by these people, but I kept going, though they kept finding me." If I had to guess, I would say the first theory is probably more likely, but let me know how you see this and what your theory is on this down below. What do you think would motivate her to do all this? Am I the jerk for installing a lock on the bathroom door after my brother-in-law kept barging in? I'm a 25-year-old female. My husband is 30 and my brother-in-law, who's 33, moved in with us after his divorce a few weeks ago. The problem is he started barging into the bathroom whenever I'm using it. He never knocks or anything. Another thing is he only does this when it's me in the bathroom and not his brother. I told my husband about what I noticed, but he laughed it off and called me paranoid. It was embarrassing because his brother would see me exposed and it made me feel uncomfortable. My husband said he spoke to him and he apologized, but he did it again. When my husband and I got married, we promised not to have locks or lock each other out of any room, so the bathroom didn't have a lock. I was really considering getting a lock, and I let my husband know that if his brother walks in on me on the bathroom one more time, a lock will instantly be installed. He didn't say anything. Well, yesterday, my brother-in-law walked in on me showering. He knew I would be in the shower, but barged in, claiming he needed to pee. I had enough, and I went out and got a lock and installed it. My husband got home saw it and blew up on me, saying that I violated an agreement that we had and went against his wishes, being uncomfortable with locks in the house. He demanded I remove it and promised and guaranteed that his brother wouldn't walk in on me again, but I refused. He's been pissed about it since then and is giving me the silent treatment. For more information, I'm not close with my brother-in-law. My husband is. I don't even talk to him that much, and I barely ever sat with him at any gathering before he moved in with us. Jumping into the future, there is an update. So before I provide an update on the situation, it's worth noting that my brother-in-law used to do this with the bedroom too, but at least I'm not always exposed in the bedroom. So my husband came home and I told him the lock will not be removed until his brother leaves, and his reaction was to try and remove the lock himself and tell me to quit acting childishly. What I did was not shout or scream, but pack a bag and go to my mom's house for the next few days until this gets resolved somehow. On my way out, I saw my brother-in-law in the driveway smoking. He knew what the argument between me and my husband was about, but instead of stepping up to fix it, he offered to take me to my mom's house, saying that my husband could use some space from me. This made me cry the whole Uber ride to my mom's house. The reason I feel offended is because my brother-in-law tends to be hurtful when he talks about others. I did all I could to win his approval, but he thinks less of me and thinks I'm childish, just like my husband says. So, am I the jerk? When they first got married, they decided to have an agreement not to have locks in the house. That seems a little strange. Maybe that's something that people do normally, but I've never heard of that happening before. I'm guessing that one of them or both of them have had some issues with locks in the past, maybe something from their childhood or maybe something they think is going to happen. But even so, that agreement was probably made with the assumption that it would only be them in the house, not accounting for somebody who habitually just walks into the bathroom when they know that you're showering. I mean, that situation alone, how can the husband be okay with knowing that his brother is trying to sneak a peek at his wife while showering? And then he actually pees to completion while she's showering right there. Since the OP didn't mention it, I'm assuming that there's only one bathroom in this house, but that still doesn't make it any less weird. But let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for saying that I won't coddle my infertile sister anymore? My sister Julie has tried to have a baby for 5 years. She's had a miscarriage 2 years ago, and outside of that has been unable to get pregnant. My heart hurts for her. However, one thing I don't agree with is how my family has handled it. We're not allowed to talk about babies around Julie. Any kids younger than 3 can't come to family events that she'll attend. She won't attend baby showers, baptisms, etc. The last one I understand, but the rest feels like overkill. I got pregnant last year and I told Julie first, and she reiterated her boundaries. I said I understood. The first hurdle came with my baby shower. My mother-in-law was throwing it. I didn't expect Julie to come. Then my mom told me I shouldn't have had one, period, out of respect. I said that was ridiculous. She didn't have to come, so what did it matter? Only 3 people from my side of the family came to the shower. When my son was born, I posted a birth announcement on Facebook. My parents lectured me for this and said that it was going to hurt Julie. I said that she could block or mute me. They said I should make the effort. Julie echoed that if I cared, I'd stop. I ended up blocking her just to save drama. My aunt's 70th birthday party is next week. My husband and I plan to go, bringing our son. Julie called and asked if we were going. She then asked for me to get a sitter for our son. I said no. She doesn't want to miss the party. My aunt is one of the few people that agree that Julie's boundaries aren't fair and wants my son there, as she doesn't get to see him often. Julie got upset and started crying, saying that I was unfair. I finally snapped and asked what would happen when she got pregnant. Would we all be expected to shower her with love and attention that she's refused to show and give other people's kids? Will her baby be allowed to attend events? She said that that was different. I said no. I'm not coddling her anymore. My son exists. He's family. He's coming. She can decide if she wants to come or not. My parents yelled at me for being mean to Julie. They offered to pay for a sitter, but I said no. It's not even her house. Am I the jerk? This is really bizarre. I get that it bothers her, but it's not the fault of the people around you for having babies. The OP makes a very strong point here. When the sister ends up having a baby, how does she expect everyone else to act towards that baby? To just forget that she shunned all the other babies because she couldn't have a baby when she wanted to have a baby? And even though the OP didn't mention this part, what happens if the sister never ends up having a baby? Everyone else has to perpetually live in a state of tiptoeing around the sister, Julie, so that she's not upset for the rest of her life? When you break it down, everyone is enabling this coddling, but it's the parents that are really reinforcing it. So let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My wife cheated on me, and instead of acting publicly emotional, I got the most satisfying, soul-crushing revenge imaginable. I calculated everything and engineered a scenario so that she would have to give me the house, the kids, pay me child support, and subsidize the cost of my living for the rest of her life. life. And my plan ends with my kids seeing me as a saint and her as the evil one. Here's what I did. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This all happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend the story of my divorce and I was told to share. We started a few years ago. I thought we were happy. We were your usual suburban professional couple. Financially secure, healthy, good adult life, 2 kids, a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old boy at the time. I thought we had a healthy social life. We were going through one of your typical married couple rough patches. Both of us were working long hours, not spending enough time with each other. We were going through some developmental problems with my son and tensions in the house were running a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. I started making a much more concerted effort to get out of work when I could, help around the house, and be more emotionally available. But over the course of a few weeks, the gulf just kept getting wider. I ended up accidentally finding some messages when I charged an old iPad for my son to use. Her Facebook Messenger was still logged in and there were a lot of highly questionable messages with the guy from her hometown who all called Jim Bob Cooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't completely inappropriate, but I could tell there were quite a few missing based on the times and the context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and went about trying to fix things up. The next day, I took the day off to knock out some projects that I thought would make her happy and left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I appreciated her, but she was once again in the corner of the living room texting her girlfriends. I took the boy's iPad to the office, opened up Facebook Messenger and watched in real time as my wife tore me down. Her and JBC were making fun of me. All of my flaws, insecurities, and secrets I entrusted to my partner were now fodder for her and JBC. Not only that, but while there wasn't outright sexting, there was a sexual undertone to the whole conversation, especially when she was bashing my performance in the sack. I managed to take some screenshots but missed a good bit of the messages because as the conversation was unfolding, she was deleting them. I wasn't emotionally capable of confronting her. I stayed in the office until she was asleep and had a couple of drinks. I took off work the next day and spent some time soul searching, drinking, and trying to figure out what to do. The wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong, and I just copped out and told her I had a bad day. A couple minutes later, I was watching the iPad as the train wreck kept unfolding. So began a couple of solid weeks of taking screenshots, drinking, and detaching myself from the relationship. I knew there was no going back from this. The messages were now overtly sexual with my wife completely into it, and JBC was sprinkling in I love yous. I consulted a lawyer and I got my options and started moving forward. Here's where everything got absolutely surreal. Watching the messages, I found out JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend of quality time with my wife in a pretty nice hotel. I was missing a good bit of the information. They must have had a phone conversation about it at some point, but I was able to infer enough to get the when and where. And sure enough, the next day, the wife is buttering me up and wanting to take a spa weekend with the girls just to relax. And when she gets back, we can really focus on our marriage. I go with it all the way. It's the greatest idea she's ever had, and I'll do anything to get us back on track. I get with the lawyer and have him draft a strong separation agreement stating that she would move out, she would get weekend visitation, no child support in the interim until the divorce is final. Then I sit through the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life. After all this, most of my feelings for her are completely gone. I'm just seething with anger like I've never felt before. D-Day arrives. I take the day off work. I withdraw half of any money in any bank accounts we are joint on, leave her half alone. I had already redirected my paycheck to a new bank. I close our money market account and get a cashier's check for her half and deposit my half in my new account. I stop at Office Max and print out about 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots, and then I kill time because I don't want to be at home. She texts me that she's taking off and that she loves me. I tell her to have fun. I show up to the hotel at about 8:30 and call the wife's phone from the lobby. It goes straight to voicemail. They're probably already at it. Whatever. I walk up to the front desk and ask if I can use the phone to be connected to JBC's room. It rings 3 times and he picks up. Hello? JBC, can you send my wife down to the lobby, please? I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Okay, then I guess I'll have to call Mrs. JBC and get her down here. Totally a bluff. I knew he was married and I knew her first name, but that was about it. JBC starts shuffling in a panic. You got 5 minutes. Click. Not even 2 minutes later, my wife comes walking out of the elevator looking a little flustered. I sit her down down in the corner of the lobby. She starts spewing her nonsense, saying that it's not what it seems, and blah 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 blah. I tell her, I'm not here to argue. The things that are said in this pile of papers are what's going on. The only way that I'm not giving a copy of this to our daughter, your parents, and emailing it to everyone we know is if you move out immediately. My wife was very prideful. My daughter was going through a rebellious teen phase, and her knowing probably would have forever killed their relationship. My wife was also her parents' golden child, and she was always worried about what they thought of her. I didn't have much leverage, and shame was my only card to play. Also, because her professional life is built up around her image, I knew that she would protect that at all costs. She starts sniffling and mumbling. Then I say, this is a check for half of the money in the money market account. I've withdrawn my half of the money from all the other joint accounts. You should have more than enough to get a place. She starts to cry a little. I could almost see the different thoughts and waves of emotions going through her, but now was the time to keep pressing. I then say, here is a separation agreement that I think is more than fair considering what's going on. I'm going to need you to look over this, sign it, and leave it at the house when you've got your stuff. Do you want to look through these screenshots? No. Okay, go have fun with JBC. Do not come back to the house or I'm going to send this, holding up the ream of screenshots, to everyone. I bounce out of the lobby and I can hear her start to have a breakdown. I get to the car and drive off to a parking lot and have my own crying rage fit. Previously, I would have cried in front of her and yelled and whatnot, but I managed to get my act together enough to pull it off. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called over and over wanting to talk. I just turned the phone off, and by the time Monday afternoon rolled around, there were movers getting her stuff and she delivered the agreements. I let her have a talk with the kiddos, basically saying mommy and daddy need some time apart, we still love you, etc, etc. Standard divorce talk. After a week, she wants to have a real talk for the first time. I oblige her because I've already got my stuff together and I've got an idea of what I want, but I should hear her out. She's so sorry. She wants another chance. She wants her family back. She'll do anything. She's on her knees crying into my lap. I have no intention of ever taking her back, but I tell her she needs to set up marriage counseling on her own time at a time that works for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but she should be around the children to try and maintain a relationship with them. So starts our new normal of her coming over to the house, cooking and having dinner with the kids 3 nights a week. She always saved me a plate. I made myself scarce, her cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, and then heading back to her place. We went to counseling. It consisted of her working through her issues with a therapist, trying to figure out why she did it, her begging for forgiveness, and me stoically playing the victim. I was never going to give her another chance. All I wanted to do was kill time, establish myself as the primary caregiver to the kids, and establish her as not having residency in the house. After a few months, I go to my own therapist and I get diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my work if it's possible to go part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal issues, and it's no big deal. After 6 months of therapy, I told her that I couldn't forgive her right now and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but she is still the love of my life and maybe someday we could give it another try. She was devastated, but agreed to the divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was filed, I needed the kids to want to stay with me. I left a Google search for how to survive your wife's infidelity up on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles not so hidden in the kitchen. My daughter found them and came to me crying. I told her she wasn't supposed to find those, that mom made a mistake, that mom still loves her, and that I would always be there for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high regard, now wouldn't talk to her without screaming, and it crushed her. Not surprisingly, when the court needed statements from the kids a few months later, little brother followed big sister's lead and they both wanted to stay with dad in the house that they grew up in. When the divorce was finalized, I got the house. I had to buy out some of her equity, but that's okay. I got primary custody of the kids. I got awarded generous child support due to the difference in our incomes due to me working part-time. And now for the last 2 years, I've gotten to live in the house with my kids, work part-time, and get the now ex to subsidize it for me. And when she she takes the kids over the weekends, I get to have my fun with Tinderellas and some friends with benefits that I've cultivated. In the eyes of my kids, I'm the patron saint of fatherhood for taking the high road and always being there. In the eyes of my ex, I'm the one that got away that she will always pine for. And I get the bonus of having her come over for friskiness whenever I want it by dangling that carrot of maybe getting back together in front of her. But that is never going to happen. So was I the jerk for how I handled getting cheated on by my wife? The original poster here basically pulled out the Uno reverse card. I don't think you can really ever recover from being betrayed in that way and being hurt that badly, but somehow he was able to look beyond that and try to salvage anything that remained. One thing I will say is the original poster is obviously the victim here. He was hurt, he was betrayed beyond belief, and basically she was trying to make him out to be the fool. But the one thing that doesn't really sit right with me, even though she is the one who damaged the relationship, is the way that the OP handled the situation with the kids. Yes, she did break her promise to you, but that doesn't mean that all bets are off. It sounded to me like there was an understanding that she agreed to his terms, he doesn't blast her to the kids about what happened. But instead of having that next conversation, he strategically laid everything out for them to find it, so that way he could absolve himself of saying, well, I didn't tell them. But it's kind of like this version's equivalent of lying by omission. I think the kids should have a right to know, but the whole point of it was to talk about it together. At least that's what I would assume the wife would have wanted. That's the whole reason why she signed that paper. Not to never tell the kids. If that was the case, it wasn't clear. It just felt a little manipulative to the kids. But I know not everyone's going to agree with that. I know a lot of you guys probably think that he was totally in the right to do so. But anyway, besides that, this was wild. You rarely ever hear of a story working out like this. Usually it's somebody that cheats in a marriage and somehow miraculously ends up with all the prosperity to follow afterwards. The person they cheated on has to fund their lifestyle for whoever they're continuing to be with after the marriage is even over, through alimony or through divorce payouts, you name it. I think most people probably wouldn't have even understood to do this in the first place, so it makes me wonder if the lawyer is the one who told him how to do all this. Like I said a second ago, I don't think this guy will ever fully recover from this. He was going above and beyond trying to save this marriage by leaving work early when it was probably pretty difficult to do so, only to have her talking to some other guy behind his back in secrecy. And then not only that, but to physically act on it. She went to the hotel. She was in the room. It wasn't some theoretical cheating. She was actually there. But let me know how you guys see this situation. Do you think that what he did here was going too far, or do you think everything was totally justified? Let me know your thoughts down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. An HOA scams its residents for over 10 years before one person who moves in finally fights back. Here's what happened. A good friend of mine about 4 years ago inherited the house of his grandparents. He decided to live there for the time being till he's decided what he wants to do with the house. He grew up in it, so he did not really want to sell it. Not even a week after he moved in, he got a visit from a neighborhood committee. They said they are the 3 board members of the HOA, the Homeowners Association, and are here so he can sign his membership papers. They were extremely nosy and rude. For example, one tried to get into the garage without so much as asking. When he stopped him and asked him where he wanted to go, he had the audacity to say, "I need to check your garage to see if everything there is in order. I have a right to do this bi-weekly, and denying me access is an offense that will cost a fine." He then had enough of their audacity and kicked them out of the house. While doing so, one of the board members shoved some papers into his face and told him he needed to sign this right now. At this point, he was already living there for a week, and these papers had to be signed before moving in. Once they were gone, he took a look at the papers. They were ridiculous and gave the HOA rights that were simply unreal. They had, for example, a right to visit your home bi-weekly and check things like that you do not use the garage for storage and that you didn't have gasoline in containers in your garage. You had to mow your lawn every week. Snow had to be shoveled every 2 hours when it snowed, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. You could not park more than 1 car on your grounds except inside the garage, and a ton of other nonsense. A few days later, they came back and asked him why he did not sign the papers yet. They also wanted to check the garage again. This time, he would not even let them in and told them he would never become a member of their stupid club. To them, that meant war. Within a week, they sent him fines north of $1,000. Some of them were for denying them access to his home. Each was for $250. My friend simply did not take them seriously and used their stupid letters to help fire his grill. Then the day came where they went extremely too far. He came back and one of the board members had broken into his his garage, stood in it, and was writing things down on his notepad. But that was not even the worst part. He had 2 wonderful oak trees in the front of the house. They had been planted by his great-grandparents way back when they were newlyweds and they moved into this house. The HOA was in the process of taking them down. They had called a professional crew for this. One was already so damaged, basically all twigs were already down. It was just a stump that was left. The other one he had just started with. He lost it. He told the tree crew to stop right now and explain to them that he was the owner and what they did was highly illegal. They had no idea, since the board member claimed these trees were in violation of the rules, since supposedly too many leaves went to the neighbor's garden. He told them that there was no legal reason to put them down, but the board member claimed I had given my okay because the trees were in violation of the rules of the HOA. He looked it up later. They actually had a bylaw that if a garden produces more than 1 40-liter stack of leaves within 2 weeks, the garden owner needs to take down the offending trees within 2 weeks. He told them that he would overlook them trespassing if they would be witnesses in court for him. Then he called the cops on the board members for trespassing and breaking and entering. They had actually used a bolt cutter to get into the garage. He always had it closed with a big bike lock after that, since they had tried to get in twice before. The trial must have been glorious. Not only did they have to repay him for the lock and the tree, which was worth a ton of money, north of $50,000 if I remember right, plus damages for the second tree, he had a professional tree person look after it so all the damage healed properly, which alone cost nearly $1,000. But these idiots actually thought the trial would be unfair and tried to fight it, which probably cost them an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in lawyer and court costs. All in all, this whole trial must have cost them over $120,000. Then he went to civil court and sued them for emotional damage. He told them how much these trees meant to him since his great-grandparents had planted them with seeds from the home country. He really laid it on as thick as he could. Plus, he felt threatened by the HOA and can hardly sleep because he always fears that they're trying to get into his house. The court actually bought it and gave him $500,000 plus the cost for a state-of-the-art alarm system so that he can feel safe again in his own home. So put all together, he cost the HOA nearly $750,000. They had to file for bankruptcy and get a person to check the books so my friend would get his money. And the best part is saved for last here. The mediator found out that these 3 guys had been defrauding the HOA for well over 10 years and were giving out as many fines as they possibly could so that they could use it to bolster their income. All 3 had to sell their houses so they could pay out my friend. Now, he is for most people one of their favorite people living there, and he constantly gets invited over for grilling and whatnot. You see, most people never wanted the HOA in the first place, but the board members practically forced them to sign the contracts, claiming that it would not be optional, and if they did not sign before moving in, it would be a $500 fine. Only 6 of the over 50 members actually wanted this HOA, and people think this is because they got a part of the action as a reward for spying out their neighbors to find violations. So, was this going too far or was it justified? Was he the jerk? This was pretty crazy, and in most of these HOA scams, the HOA rarely ever ends up getting caught, and even if they do, they generally don't get this type of extreme punishment where they're sued and fined from every direction. And the fact that they uncovered they've been doing this fraud for over 10 years is kind of crazy. It sounds like a situation where they made some extra money, didn't get caught, decided to do a little bit more, didn't get caught, decided to do a little bit more, again and again and again for 10 years, to the point where their greed just got out of control, and now that's their new normal. If you've ever been in a situation like this, feel free to submit your stories via the link in the description, but if not, how would you handle this? Let me know down below. A spoiled, rotten kid bullies her mom into buying the most expensive cell phone in the cell phone store, refuses to get a case for it even when everyone is insisting on it, and then ultimately destroys her phone by accident, all within 30 seconds of getting her brand new phone. Cue the freak out. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I was working for a well-known cell phone company in sales and in tech in a rich white neighborhood. A lot of these ladies are mean as fire and their children are just as bad, sometimes worse. This kid was worse. Her mother, even though she had an expensive looking manicure and salon-style blonde hair, looked threadbare. The little girl who was about 9 or 10 immediately caused a scene in my store. My other coworker was out to lunch, so I received no backup against the little monster. The little girl said, "I want
this one. I want this one.
Pointing to the most high-end phone we have that just came on the market the week before. Her mother said,
Honey, why don't we start you out with an older model to see how you do with it? You already have an iPod and a tablet.
The little girl, reaching an octave that could possibly shatter glass, screamed,
I want this one.
The mother, sighing and turning to me, said,
Can we get the expensive phone on this account?
I go back to grab the device out of inventory. I say, we have gold, silver.
Gold! I want gold!
I start the process of putting the phone onto the account and setting up the device. I say to the mother, after she refused to put insurance on the device for some reason, well, I highly recommend a case. These phones can be easily broken.
No! I want everyone to see it's gold!
Said the little girl. I turn to the mother and tell her we have clear cases.
No!
The mother tried to convince her daughter to no avail to put a case on the phone, but eventually gives up. I finish the sale and the little girl just starts jumping around the store with her new phone. Her mother tiredly says goodbye and they walk out of the store. Right as they get outside, the little girl swings herself in a circle and the phone goes flying out of her hands and straight onto the concrete. Both of them freeze and turn ashen. Then the little girl starts to scream. The mother looks back at me with eyes wide and I just shrug. The phone was completely shattered. The screen still worked, but they had to make a trip to the repair store so the mom could pay another $100-something to have the screen replaced. I'm sure the kids screamed the entire way. Was I the jerk for not continuing to insist that they get a case for this phone? I bet the mother was so tempted to take that phone back in and demand a replacement for it. But the second she starts walking back towards that store, she probably just hears a voice ringing in her head, why don't you get insurance? Why don't you get the case? And she probably just didn't want to deal with that since she just denied all of it. It's weird to see when you have kids that rule their parents, where basically the parents are just the pawns of the kids. They're always afraid of making the kid upset because if the kid gets upset, they're gonna have a bad time. Then you have parents completely on the other side of the spectrum that think you should be grateful for being allowed to breathe in their presence. This parent-kid dynamic seems to be more like the first one. So let me know how your parents would have reacted if you were the kid in this situation. They bought you a brand new top-of-the-line phone and then you smashed it as soon as you walked outside the door. And also, jerk or not a jerk, and why? At a company work retreat, I made a joke about a crude drawing that I saw. I had no idea that it was the owner's daughter who has a disability that drew it. Almost immediately after, I was fired from my job. Here's what happened. This happened on Friday. I've been drowning my sorrows all weekend, dreading the fact that I have to start looking for a new job. Explaining why I got fired from my old job is going to be fun. I'm typing it up to try and organize my thoughts because right now it's all a mess. I had been with the company for 3 months and was still on orientation. My job was in sales and advertising. As the new guy, I was given existing accounts to manage, which consisted of providing customer service and convincing my clients to spend more money on advertising. All of these accounts already had their ad campaigns done, and if they wanted something new, the account was transferred to a senior account manager who would work with our advertising guys to put something together for the customer. Eventually, I hoped to have that job, but I had to pay my dues by proving that I could maintain the existing accounts and convince them to spend more money first. Everything was going great until last week when we were scheduled to have our quarterly retreats. Since we were the main regional office in the area, all of the employees from the satellite locations came to our office for the retreat. The owner of the company rarely visits our office. He's been overseeing the setup of a new satellite office for the last year, according to my coworkers. But he was there for the retreat, as was his disabled daughter, Amy. One of my coworkers told me Amy works at one of the satellite offices and I probably wouldn't have much interaction with her, but I should be nice. That seems like a no-brainer. I'm nice to everyone regardless. I won't claim to be an expert on Amy's disability, but it seemed like she had childlike mannerisms and struggled with expressing herself. She also had some problems with motor skills. I'll describe the only interaction I had with her prior to the incident. I went to refill my coffee and Amy was right in front of me getting her coffee. I watched her struggle with getting condiments added and putting the lid on, so I politely asked if she needed any help. She thanked me and said she did, and she let me finish making it. While I was making it, she said that she hated coffee, but her dad made her drink it because she had to be always alert. She said that in a loud voice. I smiled, said that was definitely important, and handed her the cup. She thanked me again and went back to the office her dad was using, where she had been most of the day. I felt like I had been a good Samaritan and went on my way. Most of the retreat is team building exercises, and prior to the incident, Amy only participated in the puzzle puzzle race, where groups put puzzles together without the box art to see which team can finish faster. Amy wasn't in my group, so I didn't have any interaction with her there. Neither of our teams won. The big event and the one that everyone seemed the most excited for was the last activity of the day. Our boss gave us a list of potential clients. We were supposed to select 3 as a group and put together something to attract the customer. We were told we would be judged on our creativity. My group explained that we could do pictures, slogans, jingles, whatever we wanted. Each person expected to work on one individually, then work with their group to polish it up before it was presented to everyone. It was kind of a big deal because at previous retreats, there would be clients on the list the owner was already close to bringing on board, and if you impress the owner, you just might land that account. I went with the jingle, rhymed a few words, and recorded it. It was silly, but fit the brand. My group gave me some pointers, we made some improvements, and I recorded the final product for submission. I helped my team with their projects until it was time to turn everything in. After everything was turned in, we gathered in the big conference room to critique each other. The owner went through them one by one. If it was a picture or a storyboard, he'd put it up, read it, and we'd make comments. Good or bad. There were some that were great, which drew a lot of compliments, and some that were really bad, which we laughed about as a group. You could tell the senior account managers didn't care much about the exercise or put much effort into their pitches. Nobody seemed to get upset or offended, regardless of the feedback. When my jingle was played, it got a lot of comments, not all of them good, and I took the feedback with a smile. After getting my feedback, I felt a little more comfortable about sharing my thoughts on other presentations. I gave what I thought was valuable feedback to a few products, laughed at a couple others, and then a rather crude drawing was put up for the exact same company I had chosen. I immediately joked that, well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw it? And laughed. To absolute silence. I was really confused because plenty of other people had made jokes and everyone laughed. Instead, a few people looked at me like I was disgusting, and the owner said, "Yes, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep it to yourself, maybe." Then my boss scooted down to where I was sitting and told me I needed to go to my desk. Now, I noticed as I was gathering my things that the owner's daughter was red-faced and starting to tear up. The team building exercise was over for me. I went back to my desk and it began to sink in that the drawing must have been drawn by the owner's daughter. There was no warning or anything. The owner didn't reveal who put together what we were looking at until after a few critiques. Maybe I should have known? Everyone was joking and having fun up to that point. Someone else had a pretty bad drawing they got laughed at. Either way, I felt awful. As soon as the event was over, I approached my boss to apologize. He told me to wait for him in his office. Long story short, I was fired. My boss said since I was still on orientation, he had decided I wasn't a good fit for the company, so it was better to let me go now. He didn't outright say that I was being fired for making fun of her drawing, but that's literally the only thing that I've ever gotten in trouble for. My work up until that point had been praised. I didn't get much time to process it because my boss had already called security, who showed up fairly quickly and escorted me to my desk to gather my things before escorting me out of the building. An hour later, I got a call from one of my former teammates who asked if I wanted to join the team for a drink one last time. They needed it after the retreat and felt bad that they didn't warn me. I wasn't feeling up for it, but I wanted to try and make sense of the whole situation, so I went to the bar. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, since I'm about to start looking for a new job, a few references from coworkers wouldn't be bad, since I definitely won't be getting one from my boss or the owner of the company after everything that happened. The team explained that Amy comes to all of these retreats and that she always does some crude drawing like that. Everyone just sort of knows to say nice things about it and move on. One of my teammates said that once you've seen one of her drawings, you know what to look for. Well, I didn't, and nobody warned me. I started to get pretty upset that this was a known thing and everyone knew but me. But what could I do? I had already screwed up and it cost me my job. The team also shared more about Amy. Apparently, she works at one of the satellite offices but doesn't really do anything. The people in charge of the office try to come up with stuff for her to do because she gets upset when she's bored. The team said the way people who work there described it, they were basically her babysitter, so she wouldn't bother her dad all day when he spent most of his time there. And after he moved on to establish the new satellite office, he didn't take Amy with him because she liked all the friends that she had at that office. They also said that her dad harassed a few single guys at the office to take her on dates, which seemed pretty HR inappropriate, but he does own the company. My team said Amy desperately wants a boyfriend and wants to get married, which she talks about all the time. The consensus seemed to be that there's no way that she actually understands how relationships or marriage works, and her dad probably put this idea in her head to begin with. One of my teammates did joke that it wasn't a bad deal because whoever married her would inherit the company since she is the old man's only kid. I wasn't really in the mood for jokes at that point after losing my job over a joke, so I told them I needed to go. The only good thing is my former team members did say they would gladly give me a reference if I needed it since they felt so bad about not telling me the Amy situation to begin with. Oh, and the cherry on top, Amy sent me a Facebook friend request over the weekend. I haven't accepted it. I already upset her and it cost me my job. Part of me wants to accept it, apologize, and block her, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that either. I'm going to take a few days to get myself together and then get my resume out there. I've decided that I am going to accept the friend request. I plan to open with an apology. If she replies, great. If she doesn't, then at least I will have a clear conscience knowing that I did the right thing. Jumping into the future, here's the update. First of all, thank you to everyone who made me laugh. The first time someone joked about me accepting the friend request, marrying Amy, and taking my revenge by inheriting the company made me uncomfortable. But by the third time I saw it mentioned, I couldn't help but laugh. A lot of you gave me good advice. I appreciate those who talked about the legal action and what options I had. Unfortunately, I was still on orientation with my company, which is like a probationary period. During that time, they can let me go for any reason. They could fire me for wearing the wrong colored socks if they wanted. I had to sign an agreement to get employed which stated that I understood this. There's literally nothing I can do legally. At the end of the day, I decided to have some drinks with a good friend, talk things out, and see what he would do. Dave's been my best friend since we were in elementary school. We probably spent more time together than some actual brothers. Dave was firmly on the side of accept a friend request, apologize, and clear your conscience, man. I'm getting us another round of shots. He knows me better than anyone, and he knows that the guilt would eat me alive. I posted it here because it bothered me. I decided to take his advice and everyone here who pushed me for that as well. So that's what I did. I accepted the friend request. I immediately messaged Amy. I said I shouldn't have made that joke about anyone's work. It was unprofessional and I was sorry. It took her a while to respond, but when she finally did, she thanked me for my apology. But she sent me the request because she wanted to apologize since I lost my job over it. I said she didn't owe me an apology, and there was another long pause before she asked if she could copy paste something to me. I wasn't sure what it was, but I said she could. She pasted a generic message, but one she had clearly spent some time on. I don't want to type it word for word, but I'll paraphrase. Hi, my name is Amy. Please forgive me if I'm slow to respond to you. I suffered a brain injury when I was a little girl, and it takes me a while to type things out. There was more to it, but that's the basic stuff. I responded saying it was not a problem, and she could take all the time she needed. Amy and I ended up messaging back and forth until almost 3 a.m. No, we didn't fall in love. We aren't going on a date. I'm not going to marry her for revenge so I can take her dad's company. However, I do think I would like to be friends with her. Not because I feel bad for her, but because she's genuinely a nice person, and honestly, everyone could use a few friends like that. We spent a lot of time talking about her. That's just the direction it went. So I asked questions and she seemed comfortable talking about it. Amy was in a car accident when she was a kid. She was in the car with her mom and they were hit by a drunk driver coming back from a birthday party from one of her classmates. Her mom didn't make it and Amy suffered a brain injury that impacts her motor skills. Because it makes it difficult for her to speak and to do simple things like getting dressed, making coffee, etc., people assume that she's mentally challenged. She was put in special ed because of it, but worked really hard and graduated from high school. She even wanted to go to college, but her dad didn't think it was a good idea. Her life has been difficult because it's hard for her to communicate with people. By the time she can get a fully formed sentence out, the conversation is over. She can type slowly, but most people don't want to type when they're face to face. She even admitted that when she's not at work, she will sometimes carry a tablet and pretend that she's mute because that's just easier. We eventually circled back to the drawing and my terrible response to it. She wasn't that offended by my response because she assumed that I didn't know. She got upset primarily because she knew all hell was about to break loose and she had no way to communicate with anyone. She was so upset when she found out that I got fired and tried to talk to her dad, but he wouldn't listen to her. She's fully aware that a lot of people at the company just pretend to be nice to her because she's the owner's daughter, but she does have a few friends at the satellite office where she works who better understand her disability. She gets frustrated because she truly can't contribute anything but is happy when they are able to find busy work for her to do. It might take her all day to do something another person could do in a couple of hours, but it's better than sitting around bored all day. She knows that she's a burden and bother to her dad when he's around, but he's her dad and she loves him. She wishes every single day that she was a daughter he could be proud of rather than a burden. She tries talking to him via emails and text messages, but he usually doesn't respond. If they're in the same location, he'll just walk over and respond verbally, which is frustrating because it becomes a one-sided conversation with her unable to do anything but give simple one-word answers like yes or no. She also thanked me again for helping with her coffee. She said that when she was younger, she tried to do everything by herself and would get mad when people helped her, but now she's learned to appreciate the few who do. Most just stand there and look away, pretending to patiently wait for her to do it on her own. It was getting late for both of us at that point, really late. It takes her a long time to respond to messages, there's misspellings. I get why some would assume that she's mentally challenged. I myself referred to her in my first post as having childlike mannerisms, which was a misunderstanding on my part. When she tries to force words quickly or emphasize something, she gets really loud, which makes her sound like an excited toddler rather than an adult trying to have a conversation. We ended our talk last night agreeing to talk again sometime. She asked if I had watched the first episode of House of the Dragon yet, which I have, and she asked if I'd like to talk about it after she watches it. I told her I'd love to. So that's it. That's the update. Sorry to everyone who expected me to steal her dad's company. I'm definitely not going to do that. Talking to Amy did make me feel a lot better though. I don't know how I'm going to handle the whole firing thing in my next interview, but a few of you suggested I just leave a gap on my resume, and I may just do that. So ultimately, was I the jerk for making a joke about Amy's drawing? Honestly, it seems like the OP is a pretty good guy. He didn't try to make the situation worse. He didn't try to go after Amy to try and get revenge on the dad through Amy like a lot of people thought that he was going to do. He didn't try to take down the company even though he was frustrated. He just had a conversation with Amy and got to know her. He says that even the joke about marrying Amy to steal the company through inheritance made him uncomfortable, let alone actually going in that direction for any reason. I really didn't expect the story to go in the direction of learning all about Amy and her backstory and him really building a connection with her, and it was pretty interesting to see his perspective on everything. For some reason, the whole moment when it actually happened, when he made the joke about the drawing, it was almost like a sitcom or something, like it was a scene from The Office. But nobody gave him a heads up on this. Nobody explained that Amy always has a drawing and what to look out for. He just went in there totally blind, thinking that it was fair game to make fun of this, like they were making fun of everything else in that presentation. It's a little surprising that the dad, the owner here, doesn't see it as it happened logically. The OP didn't have all the information. But then again, it's probably hard to detach the emotional side since it's his daughter that was the subject of the joke here. It sounds like the OP and Amy are actually going to become friends, despite this whole situation, which is great to see because that's an unexpectedly wholesome ending to this whole thing. So let me know what you would do if you were in this situation and you lost your job, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for having my kids wear tie-dye when they're with their dad? I'm a 30-year-old female, my ex-husband is 31. We got divorced 5 years ago, and during our divorce, we owned a single-wide mobile home built in 1973 on a large piece of land that is zoned for a trailer park. He wanted the new truck and our savings. I wanted the old trailer and the land. My ex and I have 2 girls, 8 and 7, and since my divorce, I slowly started buying old single-wides and restoring them, turning it into a business. I love it. My girls go to their dad's and his affair partner's apartment every other weekend. I started noticing their clothes, electronics, and toys were not coming home. At first, I thought their dad was just keeping a few outfits for them there. However, my 8-year-old got upset when she was packing. I asked her what was wrong. She told me her dad takes her clothes and sells them online, that she doesn't want to take her favorite shirt over there. I immediately called my ex. I asked him to return our daughter's clothes, not wanting to throw my daughter under the bus. I blamed it on them not having enough for school. He played dumb. He said he got rid of the clothes that were too small. I pointed out that the jeans our 7-year-old had were brand new. He then said that it was only fair that he got some cash because he owned the trailer and the land. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing this good. I was pissed. I took my daughters down to the dollar store and bought some cheap shirts, to a thrift store and bought some cheap shorts. We had a girls' tie-dye night, hot pink, everything. Each of them made 5 shirts and 5 bottoms. I let our girls design and decorate them. My girls loved it. The following week, my ex sends the girls home. I could tell he's mad, but he didn't say anything. The clothes were not returned. No fear, I knew this would be an issue. We made extras. When the girls went back, they were wearing tie-dye. They were there with their dad for an hour before he called and demanded different clothes. I kindly told him that our daughters love those clothes. They actually really love tie-dye. My ex got even angrier and said that his parents have a major family party and the girls can't wear pink tie-dye. I told him he should go buy other clothes if he didn't want them to wear it. He called me a jerk for being so petty. Am I the jerk? Stories like this sometimes enrage people, but these type of stories just kind of feel sad to me sometimes because obviously he needs the money. He's not able to get it or unwilling to get it in other ways, so he decides to rip off the mother of his children. Yeah, they're not together, but still you're cannibalizing your own family unit even if you are divorced. You're basically eating at the shared resources that the two of you guys have to raise these kids together apart. It's just very short-sighted, and it seems like it's fueled by a whole tit-for-tat type approach because he's saying that he owns the land and it's only because of him that she's in a good position, when from the sounds of it, that's probably not true. But let's just assume that it was. Why would that make it okay to steal from the pocket of your children's mother? I don't think it is. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A Karen actually called the police because her son died in a video game. The guy that was shooting in the video game is who she called the police on. We're talking pixels on a screen. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I am Swedish, so sorry for my bad English. So I was playing some Rainbow Six Siege solo queue and I met this 12 to 14 year old kid. After the game, he invites me to a 1v1 on house. I agreed and the game was on. Now, I'm okay at Siege around Platinum 3 and he was maybe Silver or something, so it was an easy game for me. And this kid was trash talking the whole time. Like,
Yeah, bro, you suck. Oh, come on, man.
and
Oh, you really gonna play that?
insert different operator here,
He sucks.
and so on and so on. So the real story begins when he starts using swear words.
Frick you, man.
I respond with silence, and that's when the mom gets on the voice call and says,
Oh, why are you swearing at my son?
"What? I haven't been swearing at your son."
Well, I just heard you say frick you to my son.
No, I did not.
And why are you killing my son all the time?
Well, it's kind of the point of the game to kill the opponent.
Well, why is he not killing you then?
Well, that may be because I happen to be better at this game than he is.
I want you to stop killing my son.
Yeah, no, not gonna happen, lady.
Do you want me to call the police for assault?
Good luck, ma'am.
Where do you live?
I live in Sweden.
Do not lie to me, you jerk!
Ma'am, why would I lie to you?
Why would you not lie to me to get out of the police coming to your house?
Touché, men jag ljuger faktiskt inte för dig just nu, is what I said, which means, but I'm not lying to you.
What is your address?
I said Riksgatan 112 Stockholm. This is the address of the Swedish parliament. There's silence for a while, and then I hear,
So now I've called the police and they are on their way.
"Sweet, I'll be here waiting for them."
Good, I hope you will enjoy jail.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. Well, goodbye. I better get dressed for when the police show up. Bye. Hey though. I left the game and went to sleep. For what I know, the police have not showed up yet, so was I the jerk for upsetting this hysterical mother to the point that she called the police on me over her kid dying in a video game? It's pretty funny that he gave the address of the Swedish parliament, but how would you even call the police on somebody who presumably is in a totally different country than you are? I don't know how Rainbow Six Siege sets up their games, but I'm assuming there's an EU server, a North America server, and so on. So this person that's calling is probably calling from the EU somewhere else. And I'm guessing she and her son are not in Sweden because she assumes that he's lying about where he's from. The question I have is, has the mom never seen her son ever play video games before? Is this the very first time she's ever seen him do one-on-ones with somebody and have this type of interaction? Because why else would she freak out this bad? I guess maybe because someone was able to get her son to say the word frick, and maybe that's what set her off because she heard her son say it even though the OP didn't say it himself. She probably assumed there's no way my son would ever say this unless someone said it to him, which clearly is not true. When stuff like this happens, it's so absurd that it's hard to even know how to respond to this if you're in that situation. I mean, if you're playing on your Xbox or whatever and you heard somebody say this, the mom gets on the voice chat and starts saying that she's gonna call the police on you. What do you even do? How do you even react to that? Let me know down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. I'm a woman who is engaged to a guy named Jack. At our engagement party, my old guy friend Matt told Jack that I have always had a crush on Matt. Now my fiance wants to leave me because he doesn't want to be a second choice. I have never had a crush on Matt. It just simply isn't true, but I don't know what to do now. Here's what happened. happened. My best friend Sarah, who's 26, and her husband Matt, who's 28, have put me in a very difficult position with my fiance Jack, who's 30. I knew Matt since my childhood. He was my neighbor and we were friendly. Sarah and I were roommates in college and became close friends. When I introduced Sarah and Matt, they hit it off and started dating each other. I was happy to see two of my friends get together, but also annoyed that I became the third wheel and was often ignored or set aside because they were so into each other. By the time I graduated, Matt had completely dropped me as a friend. That saddened me, but I was still good friends with Sarah, so it was what it was. Sarah and I would frequently hang out, but I never talked with Matt other than the occasional polite hellos. Sarah would sometimes try to do couples dates with her and Matt and me and my dates. I found that Matt had developed an unpleasant personality and would frequently be rude and condescending towards me. However, he's a very devoted and loving husband to Sarah, so for her sake, I ignored him. When my fiance and I got engaged, we had no plans to do a party. Sarah was disappointed that we didn't throw an engagement party, so she organized a small get-together at her home to celebrate us. The party was nice, and as things were winding down, my fiance and I went to thank Sarah and Matt for their sweet gesture before we took our leave. Matt was pretty sloshed by then, and out of nowhere, he suddenly hugged me and in front of my fiance said that he was so glad I was finally settling down and he is relieved now that I'll be over the crush that I had on him. I was shocked and told him that wasn't true. He just laughed and told Jack that I was always chasing him and he had to work to keep me away. I dragged Sarah in and asked her to please fix this mess, and she was like, "Oh, he's sloshed, ignore him," and says, "You know, I always trust you. I know you wouldn't act on your crush." Jack was pretty pissed by this point and he walked out. I ran after him and tried explaining that this isn't true, but he told me he doesn't want to be anyone's second choice or their backup plan. Since that night, he isn't talking to me or returning my calls. I have talked to Sarah multiple times to clear things with Jack, but she's brushing me off. I don't understand why they believe this or why she'd stay friends with me if she thought that I was into her husband. I was in her wedding party and did all the work because her sister, who was the maid of honor, was too busy. I have helped her through pregnancy and have babysit her kids so many times. She never gave me any indication she thought this. And why would she want me close to her family if she believed this? I feel humiliated that these people think I was pining away for a jerk like Matt. I need help in convincing Jack that this isn't true. I'm also mad at him for throwing away our relationship over what some sloshed idiot said. I don't know what I'm going to do about my friendship with Sarah. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I talked to Sarah again and asked her, first of all, why she'd think I had a crush on Matt. She said that when I first introduced them, I had talked Matt up and gushed about him, and she took that as me being into him. I said I was fond of him since I've known him for a long time, but that doesn't mean I want to be with him. She said when they started dating, I was often upset about it. I said I wasn't upset about their dating. I was upset that she'd make plans with me and then leave me to be with him when we were all together. I didn't enjoy being the third wheel while they ignored me. That had nothing to do with wanting him, and more not to liking being left out by my best friend. I asked her why she hadn't said anything before, and she explained that she could manage the situation. She had asked Matt to stop talking to me completely, and she engineered situations so there was little chance of us socializing together. I explained that I never had a crush on Matt, and I asked her now, can you please talk to Jack and tell him? She said she didn't want to lie. This frustrated me immensely. She could ignore this imaginary crush for years and manipulate me, but won't talk to my fiance to help my relationship? I told her I was done being her friend. Thinking back, I was always doing stuff for her, and she used me, but did little for me. Jumping into the future, there is a final update. I wrote a long letter to Jack explaining the entire history of my relationship with Sarah and Matt with recent screen caps. I asserted as best I could that I never had pined after any guy and I loved him, and he was my only choice. After days of silence, Jack agreed to talk to me. We met and he said that he sees two ways of interpreting the situation. One, Matt and Sarah are right and he doesn't want to be my second choice. Or two, they are malicious people who are messing with me, and that shows very poor judgment on my part, that I'd have a best friend like this and he doesn't want that quality in a life partner. Either possibility leads to the same conclusion, that he wants to call off the engagement. He reminded me that I had represented Sarah as one of the most important people in my life. I jump up and help her all the time. I had once canceled plans with him to take care of her kid when the baby was sick. It had irked him, but he had seen it as me being nice and caring. But now he's seeing all of that in a different light. I cried and begged him not to end our engagement, but he wanted a break for a while. I thought over what he said for a few days and came to realize he was right. I was a clingy friend and a doormat. I never even saw how one-sided my friendship with Sarah was. I was a doormat with Jack too. I didn't want to get married or have kids this early, but agreed to his timelines. I gave up an exciting job opportunity with more money because he didn't want me traveling for work. I love him, but I need to fix myself and be stronger. I gave back his ring and ended things. I returned all the gifts he gave too. He was offended by that, but I didn't feel good about keeping the very expensive things he had given me. He makes a lot more than me and was very generous with what he gave me, but I can't keep that now. Sarah was quiet for a while, but then started calling me. I ignored a lot of her calls, but this morning I answered her call and told her about the breakup. I was looking for sympathy from my old friend. She was more interested in knowing if I was going to watch her kid while she and Matt went on an overnight trip. She got pretty angry when I said no. I have her blocked now. I have lost my fiance, my best friend, and my relationship with my nephew, whom I adored, all in one go. But still, I am thankful for the comments that showed this wasn't something I could fix and help me rip off the band-aid and walk away from this mess. Is there any way I could have done this differently? What should I have done? This is a tough situation, and from the sounds of it, Matt and Sarah have probably been taking advantage of the OP for a long time. And maybe the OP this entire time has been recontextualizing all of this in order to make it feel like she wasn't being taken advantage of. But it just got to the point where it's so blatantly obvious that they don't care about her at all. They just want her to watch the baby and play this token role in their lives, all while condescendingly explaining their perspectives in a way that gives them an ego boost. I'm sure Matt probably thinks he's really cool that the OP is so into him and he has to explain to his wife, oh yeah babe, she's always been into me, she's super into me. And they've latched onto that perspective to the point that they're not even willing to hear her out. Sarah says she won't talk to Jack because she doesn't want to lie. So in other words, she doesn't believe the OP. She thinks the OP is lying despite putting everything on the table and explaining it all. It's interesting that the OP came to the conclusion that ultimately Jack is right. It's only one of those two explanations. And that is what pushed her further down the path of reflecting on her friendship with Sarah and Matt. Ultimately, she learned the important lesson that these people are not your friends. Sarah and Matt don't see you as friends in the same way that you have seen them as friends for all these years. And as painful as it might be, ending the friendship with both of them is the most healthy way to deal with this mess. There's not a win-win outcome in this situation. If your best friend for your whole life did this to you, let me know how you would respond down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she cannot marry a racist? Some background. My wife and I have lived in a somewhat larger city where my daughter was born. My wife got a job opportunity in one of her employer's field offices and it was too good to pass up. We moved to the boonies when my daughter, Amy, was a preteen, and we've been here ever since. The people are nice, but we were quickly labeled as city folk, so we never really integrated very well. Amy came back the summer between freshman and sophomore year. She got a summer job, which is where she met her fiance, Dan. We have had Dan over to the house countless times, and he's polite, respectful, and seems to truly love my daughter. He's a local and his family have been locals for generations. We rarely met up with his parents, but they also seemed nice when we did. They dated long distance all through her college years. This past summer, they got engaged. His parents decided to throw an engagement last weekend at their house. We have never been there before, and I was excited to see the home where he grew up and meet his extended family. The party was fine. We did our best to fit in. But like I mentioned, we're from the city and they poked fun a little bit. His dad gave a speech, and while it wasn't overtly racist, he mentioned how he was happy his son found a nice white girl and looking forward to white grandbabies. As the night progressed, they started to share a bit of family history so that we would know the proud lineage our family would now be a part of. Without going into too much detail, they are descendants from members of a hate group. We decided to be polite and not say anything, but we didn't stay much longer. I let this stew for a few days until Amy returned home. She tells me that she was not aware of his family history, but it doesn't change her mind. I don't want her marrying into this family, and I told her so. She says Dan doesn't wholly believe what his parents do, but I'm not convinced. You can't be raised to believe you are of a superior race and not have it become internalized to some degree. She assures me that they have a lifetime for her to point out all the ways his parents are wrong, but I'm worried that if they never leave his hometown, there will be too much pushback from his family. I told her I'm going to be firm on this, that I don't want her marrying into that family. She called me a jerk and has been ignoring me ever since. I feel horrible, but this isn't what I had hoped for. So, is she right? But before you decide, there was an update. A lot has happened in the past few weeks, so I thought I would share. Not long after I posted, Amy came to me to apologize. I was surprised because based on the responses I was getting, I was preparing to apologize to her. She said she lashed out because she was trying to reconcile her relationship as she knew it with the new information about who he was. I asked her if she really had no idea, and she said that looking back, there were warning signs, but nothing that would lead her to believe that he was overtly racist. I guess being long distance and liking him so much allowed her to remain mostly ignorant. She wanted to know what she should do. I told her that I was going to talk to Dan and try and get a beat on the person who he is, apart from his parents. She seemed to think that that was a good idea. A lot of people said that I was being unfair labeling him a racist before, but now that we have spoken, I can tell you for certain that he is racist. A lot of you were trying to figure out what Amy meant by him not being wholly racist, and I think I can answer that now. He told me that he doesn't harbor hatred for anyone, but he believes the white race will go extinct eventually, and he is proud of who he is and of his race, and he doesn't want that to happen. Which I guess also explains his father's comment about white grandbabies. I told him that his heritage is nothing to be proud of, and that his beliefs will have no place in our family or in my household. He said that Amy seemed to understand him, and that I might not have a choice of whether or not his beliefs will be a part of my family. I said that he was right. If Amy wants to move forward with the wedding, then there is nothing I can do to stop her. He sneered and told me that he supposed we had nothing more to discuss then, and that was the end of it. I told Amy what he discussed with me, and she decided to call it off. She broke up with him, and he has not taken too kindly to it. He has been to the house a lot, so we decided to get her an apartment back in the city. Her work is going to start phasing back into the office anyway, so the timing works out. His parents called us and came to speak with us a few times. At first, they were just trying to figure out what was going on, but it quickly turned into them berating us. I got some flack for not standing up to them initially, so this time I made sure they knew where I stood. So, am I the jerk for telling my daughter she cannot marry a racist? Before the update, I probably would have also said it's unfair to just lump him in with his family. Just because his family believes one thing doesn't mean that he believes one thing. Plenty of people grow up in households where they do not share the same worldview as their parents or other family members in general. But from the way she tells it in the update, she's pretty certain that he does share some of those worldviews. And specifically, one part that's kind of odd is that he almost seemed like he was overly confident that his fiancée, the OP's daughter, would stick with him regardless of his or his family's beliefs. Just the fact that he sneered at the end of the conversation and said that they have nothing else to discuss paints that picture. But let me know how you guys interpret the situation. Do you think he actually is racist? And do you think it's right for the mom to say the daughter can't marry him, even though she's saying that she's not saying that, but she's also saying that? Let me know what you think, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for not taking down a video that was a gift from my best man? I have a sister that's 6 years older than me. My parents for years cancel on me at the last minute because of my sister. I have a basketball game. Oops, sorry, sister doesn't feel like going out. I am graduating. Oops, sorry, sister had a bad day at work. They have missed both major and smaller events in my life because of her meltdowns. I met the love of my life. We decided to tie the knot. From the beginning, I told my parents how I am worried my sister will ruin another special moment in my life. My mom told me over and over again that it would not happen. The day of my wedding, I received a voicemail from my mom saying they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick and she was upset. I was hurt. My best man, however, is a jokester. He took my phone, then went to my fiance and asked if he could post a video of our wedding as a gift on social media. She loved his idea. I had no idea about it until I came home. Our honeymoon was at a lakeside cabin, no cell service out there. The post caption said, "My best friend. He is an amazing person even if his parents never showed up for him." The video was still pictures of us next to her parents, me on the dance floor cutting cake, where you would normally see both parents in a wedding picture. The sound behind the video is my mom's voicemail explaining how they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick. I came home a week later to hundreds of messages. family members from both sides insisting that I take it down. I was told my sister hasn't stopped crying. My mom is refusing to leave the house. I may be the jerk here. I didn't take it down when I got my messages. I didn't call my family back right away. I waited until my vacation time was over at work and enjoyed my time with my wife in our new home before I contacted anyone. My dad told me to take down the video. It was, quote, just a bad night for them, that they will make it up to me and my wife for not coming. My reply was, exactly how do you plan to make up my wedding? It's a once in a lifetime thing. You chose to ignore my feelings on the whole matter. Then he just repeated, he will make it up to me. I told him I would take down the video only when he made up missing my wedding. Flustered, we both hung up the phone before we said things we shouldn't have. So am I the jerk here? I could have just taken down the video, but I didn't. This is a pretty hilarious and creative way to go about this. The fact that the best man in the situation just made a collage basically of all the best moments from the wedding and put the sound as the voicemail, that's genius. And even though it's really funny and it is proving a point here, I'm guessing if he doesn't take it down, he's probably going to permanently sever some sort of relationship with his family. Maybe not to the point where they'll never talk to him again, but they're not going to be happy with him. But also at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, how long am I going to be disrespected until you do something about it or resist it? And he's obviously hurt by his parents not going to his wedding. So even though this wasn't meant to be a vindictive revenge attempt trying to get back at the parents, it kind of did get back at the parents without him even having to do anything. His friend set up the whole thing and he wasn't even aware of it. It's hard to weigh the pros and the cons in a situation like this because you have to stand up for yourself, but you also want to keep your family around. It just depends on how the family is and how they will react to this in the long term. Every family is different. So if this was your family, how would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My aunt screwed over my grandma for years. I put my nose in her business. My parents got wise on the fraud and eventually reported her to the IRS. The IRS bankrupted her and now her and her husband are destitute and too old to work. This happened about 5 years ago. My grandma was getting old, late 80s, early 90s. She had one wish, to not die in a senior home. Easily done, as my grandpa had sold some assets way back when, then invested the money and let it ride for 30 years. He never touched it and collected a pension. Way back when my grandpa died, about 10 years before this, my grandma appointed my dad, this terrible aunt, and my uncle as the trustees of the trust. Basically the trusted advisors for her and her care for the foreseeable future. All was well in the beginning. Then my dad, Willie, moved further away and he couldn't take care of the day-to-day upkeep as the trustee and to see that my grandma was okay. My aunt, Rebecca, told her that she and my uncle, Fred, who lived in Arizona, would take over and all would be fine. It was fine for a while. My dad went back to visit a few times and noticed my grandma didn't always have overnight care, or that her mail wasn't picked up and the driveway wasn't plowed. She also lost her cable TV and newspaper subscription. My dad figured it was just lapsed, so he had the services put back on. My dad also noticed that my grandma was eating moldy food at times because her truck was sold and she had no transportation. She drove up until she was 90 years old. She basically just chilled at the house and did crossword puzzles. The craziest part of this is that my aunt only lived 2 miles away from my grandma, but my grandma told my dad she saw my Aunt Rebecca once a week on Saturday for about an hour. As with the elderly in age, my grandma passed away. She did get her wish and was able to die in her own home. Upon her death, things started to get real interesting. Once the probate lawyer got her children, my dad, aunt, uncle, and other estranged Aunt Becky, around the table, some shady business started to come out. My Aunt Rebecca asked that everyone just forego any audit or paperwork and they just sell the house for around $400,000 and divide up the remaining bank account balance of roughly $400,000. So just signing on the line, each sibling was able to get a check for $200,000. Not too bad of an inheritance. My dad thought that this was somewhat a little rushed. He said that at the time he wanted to wait because my grandma's house was easily in the $600,000 range based on size and location. My aunt exploded in his face, cursing at him and calling him all kinds of names because he was unwilling to sign the assets then and there. She basically wanted a quick close while everyone looked the other way. My dad ended up leaving the room after the screaming and the deal wasn't signed that day. It took nearly 6 months before another appointment and they were all back at the table. The thing is though, when you are a trustee and and the person dies, the funds and access to financial accounts are all under heavy scrutiny until all beneficiaries are made aware and sign the final papers. At the next meeting, my dad went in there with no intention to sign the deal. He got his brother, my Uncle Fred, to agree that they audit the entire accounts going back 5 years. When they ended up demanding this again at the meeting with the lawyer, my aunt ended up arguing that a forensic audit would cost $5,000. And it's a waste. Like, what difference does it make? 2 beneficiaries requested it, so it was what was going to happen. The audit report showed up 3 months later. Here's where it gets good. My dad began looking over the audit reports and saw that it was full of holes. Excessive monthly food costs for a 90-year-old lady. Payments made for car services for a car my grandma no longer had. Many different things in there that just didn't add up. My dad asked me to give the audit a second look, so I spent Saturday night going over it, and here is some crazy stuff I found and alerted my dad about. Number 1, Costco monthly food costs of $1,100 to $2,000 for the last 4 years. Number 2, telephone bills for 6 cell phones. My grandma has a home phone only. Number 3, gasoline for a truck my grandma didn't have for 4 years. Easily $400 a month. Number 4, house repairs paid to my aunt's husband, who owned a construction business. Some of the house repairs were about $16,000 for a new roof, new garage doors, home security system, which she didn't have, etc. All inflated prices. Number 5, my grandma paid for my aunt to go to Europe twice on vacation. Number 6, my grandma was paying my estranged Aunt Becky a stipend of $2,000 a month for the last 5 years, as well as her deadbeat son for $2,500. Every month they were paid. Number 7, all grandkids were to be paid a lump sum of $10,000 upon their 30th birthday, as that is when the $50 check from grandma stopped for all grandkids. Guess who was paid out? Her kids and my estranged aunt's kids, but not me or my siblings. My grandma gave loans to my Aunt Rebecca for her husband's construction business in return for equity in the company, which amounted to nothing. These loans totaled to about $200,000 over 3 years, right around when the housing bust happened. And lastly, number 9, they also sold her assets like jewelry and whatnot for cash because some big ticket items simply vanished from her house. Armed with all of this, the next probate meeting was interesting. In the time between my grandpa's death and the 3rd probate meeting, my aunt's construction business filed for bankruptcy, so that $200,000 in equity grandma had simply vanished. The probate lawyer was also somewhat concerned and makes it obvious that this was fraud and a breach of fiduciary duty, where my aunt could actually get real prison time. After this, the negotiations were much more favorable. My aunt got nothing, literally zero. My other aunt only received $25,000 after all stipend payments. My father and uncle shared the rest after all grandkids received the $10,000 payout. The house sold to the first offer of $520,000. That was just the regular revenge for the treacherous bee that ripped off my grandma and had her eating moldy food. Here is the pro revenge. My aunt probably felt pretty bad that she couldn't supplement her lifestyle with grandma's money anymore, but that was the least of her worries. Since she tried to personally rip me off for $10,000, I took it personally. I don't care how tough you are, the IRS is the scariest thing that can happen to a person. Nobody wants to have their money forcibly removed. I did a little research and found the 3949A, which is the IRS's information referral form. I also had the audit and legal office would provide the full trust and requested, demanded by the IRS. I don't know if it ever was. So I photocopied my documents, had them notarized, and sent off the info to the IRS. I felt like it went nowhere. Then maybe 18 months later, I was notified and asked to come to the IRS building for an appointment in my city. The agent went over all the details, what they found in their research, and then asked for a sworn statement. It turns out my aunt didn't declare something like $1.2 million in additional income over 5 years, and as such, she owed the IRS around $420,000 plus all the penalties. There was no way she was going to pay that on a teacher's pension. And after her husband's business went bankrupt, her house was sold, her vehicles were sold, they left the state. Now my aunt and uncle live in a depressing desert town in the southwest, similar to Good Springs. The IRS paid me around $60,000 about 3 months after the appointments. She should have just paid that $10,000. So, was I the jerk for taking revenge on my aunt after what she did and getting a payout from the IRS of $60,000 into my pocket? This is pretty wild that the IRS paid the original poster here $60,000. That is more money than a lot of people will ever make in an entire year. I've always heard that was possible, that you could rat people out and get money from the IRS, but I've never actually seen a story where somebody does that. I'm assuming there's probably entire businesses dedicated to this to try and find people that are evading the IRS and turning them in and getting big checks like this, because that's a lot of money. I don't know how they do the breakdowns, but I'm assuming since she owed $1.2 million, that was the reason why the OP got paid so much here. But anyway, going to the core of the story, this is just a situation where somebody's greed goes too far. The aunt was probably tipping her toe in this whole stealing grandma's money thing just a little bit in the beginning, seeing if anyone noticed, and if nobody noticed or said anything, she would take a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. So over the years, she ended up just basically thinking that she would never get caught and got greedy. And her only strategy for not getting caught once this all came to light was to try and convince the rest of the family that doing a $5,000 audit was too expensive. When there's this much money on the table, you gotta assume people are gonna do an audit. That is a wild assumption to think that they're not gonna try and audit this. It's like she was stealing from every conceivable angle she could even think of. Food costs, cell phone costs, gasoline, paying other people, going to Europe, putting money into her husband's business. Is there even anything that she could have taken money from other than just putting the cash directly into her bank account that she didn't already do, or at least attempt to do? I mean, they even stole the grandma's physical assets, so who knows how much was actually stolen there, because she might have had gold or diamonds in the house. It is pretty sad that even though the grandma had all that money, in the end, she was just robbed and she had to sit in that house alone, nobody coming to spend time with her other than 1 hour a week eating moldy food. If this was your grandma and somebody had stolen this much money from them and tried to take your $10,000, how would you act? What would you do? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I'm a nanny and I found out that my boss is sharing private videos of me online. I've worked for a really nice normal family for a few months. At least I thought so. The kid is 10 months old and very sweet. She's super active though, and she often fights me on nappy changing. I have a gentle approach, and if she rolls/crawls away, I just encourage her to come back, let her play for a moment, and then try again. So as you can imagine, it can take a while. The family has cameras in both kids' rooms, which I don't mind and I was informed of, and they were just for safety mostly, especially at night with the rooms being spaced out and noise not traveling. Well, a family friend who knows the family contacted me last night and showed me that the mom had shared a video of me from the nanny cam of me changing the kid's nappy on Facebook with a caption that said, "Nanny taking half an hour to change a nappy," and a laughing emoji. There's comments basically making fun of me. One person even said to find a new nanny. She's replied saying things like, "We love our nanny," but was in hysterics watching this. I'm not gonna lie, I cried for about an hour. I'm a very private and highly anxious person, and I feel so hurt and betrayed by the mom. I work part-time and I was there after she shared the video and didn't say anything, and I'm supposed to be working on Thursday, but I'm dreading going. I kinda just want to ghost her and never go back again. I am so humiliated, and I don't know how to deal with this going forward. The original poster answered some questions, the first of which was, wait, since you use nappy for diaper, are you in the UK? If you are, I think you might have legal recourse for either online harassment or that the mother violated your rights to privacy by posting it online. I would talk to a lawyer and get an expert opinion. The OP responds and said, Australia, I'll have a look into it. I am so incredibly sorry this happened to you, OP. You have every right to have your privacy respected, and she should be grateful for a nanny who understands her daughter and takes a gentle, loving approach with her. The OP says, thank you. This has been hard on me too. I take pride in my gentle approach. I have a bachelor's degree and an RIE certification. Seeing these moms pick apart my caregiving philosophy has upset me a lot. Jumping into the future, there's an update. I've sent the message. Basically, I told her that I saw the video and that it's inappropriate for her to share footage of me online without my consent, that I feel disrespected and I no longer will be a nanny for their family. I also sent a screenshot of the video and I've saved the video, so if she tries to gaslight me, I have the evidence. I'm currently a nervous wreck. Jumping into the future, there's a final update. I let her know I was quitting, that I saw the post, etc. She took a few hours to respond and her response was unhinged. She told me that I had no right snooping on her social media and that the footage was of her baby, so it was fine. She asked me to please come in until she found a replacement. I told her I was uncomfortable returning and that the video and the comments really upset me. She offered to remove the cameras, but I stood strong and I told her I was not coming back. I asked her to remove the video, and according to the family friend, it's been taken down. However, she must have blocked me as I can't see her Facebook anymore. I haven't heard from her since Wednesday. A nanny friend of mine is moving overseas, so her family has an opening coming up and they are amazing. My friend has let them know that I'm looking, so I may have a new family already lined up. So, am I the jerk for how this was handled? The first thing that's strange in this is that she was snooping on her social media, which presumably was public because other people were responding, and she was able to see it herself before she was blocked. So I'm not sure if that exactly counts as snooping. And second of all, like other people pointed out, if the footage was of the baby, then why was the entire purpose of the caption on that video to poke fun at how long she was taking to change the baby? I'm guessing what happened here is the mom probably did this with little or zero ill intent, but instead just totally disregarded the privacy of somebody else who doesn't want a moment like that where they're the focus of the entire thing shared for other people to ridicule and interpret however they want. It probably is going to put the mom in a tough position to find a replacement that fast, but at the same time, how can she expect her to come in when the OP feels totally embarrassed about this whole situation and violated? But let me know how you see this. Do you think the OP left the mom high and dry in this situation, or was she within her rights to just walk away from this entire thing as soon as she found out that her privacy had been violated? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for taking my friend to a wedding instead of my boyfriend because he wants to bring his 4 children with us to an herb wedding? I'm a 30-year-old female and I've been with my boyfriend who's 33 for a little over a year, 16 months. My boyfriend has 4 children, a 12-year-old boy, a 7-year-old girl, 7-year-old girl, and a 5-year-old boy, all from a previous relationship. I met the children after we had been dating for 7 months, after meeting their mom around month 5. The biological mom and I get along well. I understand her concerns of being replaced and assured her I am not trying to take her place in any way. On to the situation. About 3 months ago, I received an invitation to the wedding of a friend. I'm allotted a +1 and naturally I invited my boyfriend. We discussed the theme of the wedding. It's an herb wedding, transportation, since there's an open bar, and a few other details. I discussed these plans with my BFF, who's a 31-year-old female. In case there was an emergency, she is my support system, as I am low contact with my family. Fast forward to the big day. After spending months discussing plans, my boyfriend shows up to pick me up for the wedding with his 4 children in the back seats. I look at him with a confused look and asked him what's going on. He says, "What do you mean?" And I say, "Why are the kids in the car? Did you forget you were picking me up for the wedding today?" "I didn't forget, I just thought this would be a good family outing." At this point, my mind is blown and I am frustrated. I asked him why he thought that, seeing as how we discussed the plans. He said it's not a big deal. They'll only be attending the ceremony. I inform him that my invite is for me and my +1, not a +5. And besides, nothing about this event is appropriate for children. He then says, "Okay, we can skip the wedding and just have a family day." I told him absolutely not, and that his bad decision making was not going to be my problem. I sent him on his way, called my BFF, and 2 hours later we attended the beautiful ceremony together. My boyfriend sees this on Snapchat and goes ballistic on me. How could I go without him? How could I replace him? How his children felt rejected? How I should have skipped the wedding for a family day. I waited until he ran out of steam and calmly told him that he made these choices. We had plans and he chose to try and change them at the last minute, that his changes were inappropriate and also not my problem. He called me a jerk and is refusing to speak to me until I apologize to him and to his children. He also wants an apology from my best friend forever, my BFF, for attending the wedding in his place. Jumping into the future, there's an update. I finally talked to my boyfriend. I showed up at his house this morning at 5 a.m. because the silence was driving me insane. He works overnight and gets off at 4 a.m., so I knew he was up and we discussed the situation and he did apologize. Apparently, he spoke to his children's mother and she ripped him a new one. She did text me this morning, I don't think she thought I was up, to try and help his case. Informed me that he didn't really grow up going to social events and the only wedding he's ever been to was family. Apparently, they just show up with friends and family, whatever that means. She also thanked me for having common sense and not taking her children to a quote effing herb wedding. And if she had known, she would have switched weekends with him or came with me herself. She told me to call her next time something like this this happens. I just told her not to worry about it. Anyway, the conversation was productive. After he apologized, he explained that his babysitter, his sister, fell through. She tested positive for the vid, and he didn't know what else to do. He said he understood where he went wrong, but was too embarrassed to admit this to me. This was the red flag for me. I told him that I understood what happened and wished that he had just talked to me. He told me that it wouldn't happen again. I told him he was correct. It won't happen again because this would be our last conversation. 4 days of not speaking really spoke volumes, and the fact that he was too prideful to admit his faults didn't sit well with me. I also showed him this post and he got upset with me for sharing it. I told him it didn't really matter at this point and he accused me of not considering his feelings. I took all the advice I was given and just left. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out and blocked him once I got to my car. My brain started to hurt at the thought of continuing the conversation, let alone the relationship. I just wanted to let y'all know that I handled it the way that it needed to be handled. I seriously thought I was wrong for how I spoke to him in front of his children. I'm going to sleep now because the situation has been plaguing me for a week and I'm tired. So, was I the jerk? The person that I feel for the most in this entire situation is the baby's mama. It sounds like that woman is going to be bound to this guy for the rest of her life, sort of as a pseudo babysitter cleanup crew for whatever he does. She's out there offering explanations of why he's behaving the way he is to his future girlfriends that came after her. I understand why she does it. It makes sense because she shares children with him, so she wants to make it as clear and transparent and easy to keep her children safe as possible. But I'm sure she doesn't want to do that. That's the scary part about having kids with someone. Once you have those kids with them, if you're looking out for the best interest of those kids, you're tangled with that person pretty much forever. The mother in this situation is pretty much putting her emotions to the side for the benefit of her children. She's saying, hey, call me anytime this happens. We'll figure it out. But even with all that, nobody wants a silent treatment for 4 days when they're not even the one that did anything wrong. So I completely understand the fact that she would just say, no, I'm not doing this, and she would just leave, referring to the OP, obviously. So let me know how you see the situation and jerk or not a jerk and why. I started doing physical exercise to get in better shape. In one of my classes, 2 students became my worst bullies. They relentlessly bullied me every day that I came to class. They would look down on me because I was not in shape and they were very fit. But then it went too far and I had to get revenge. So I ruined their lives and exposed them for the snakes they are. Here's what I did. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I'm a woman originally from Russia. On New Year's Day of 2018, I resolved to get in shape. I was never overweight, but growing up in Russia and spending my very early adulthood there, I smoked like a chimney and my cardio was garbage. Going to college in America didn't help matters because I started drinking to go along with my smoking. I decided to start going to spin class. I work at a marketing firm and chose a particular spin class because I received a free year-long membership as a holiday office party present that year. It was a generous gift because it was a trendy, pricey boutique spin studio. I've ridden bikes my whole life, so I thought, how hard can it be to ride a bike that doesn't go anywhere? But my first day in class was a rude awakening. It was clear that the class that I was attending, an early morning class for people to attend before work, was an advanced one where a majority seemed to be already a part of the culture and very fit. It was obvious I couldn't keep up. The instructor was really nice and told me that since I'm new, it's a good idea for me to ride up front so that I can watch him and copy what he does more accurately. Or alternatively, he can easily see what I'm doing and offer alternatives if I'm not doing things right. I thought, what a great guy and what a great class. There were these other 2 students in the class though who gradually made my morning spin classes suck. Valerie was obviously very fit. She looked like a model and obviously worked hard to look as good as she did. Boris was her male equivalent. They were both about my age, maybe a few years older, but it was clear they were far more fit than me. They were obviously very invested in that particular gym's culture and in what they were always decked out in the store brand athletic wear. I'm not gonna lie, they looked good wearing it. They weren't a couple, but it was obvious that Boris had a thing for Valerie, and Valerie was aware of it and not reciprocating. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't my business. That thing about both of them being far more fit than me, they didn't let me forget it. For some reason, they seemed to take offense to the fact that I was riding up front. I can see why. The front 2 rows were filled with the very strongest, fittest people, the let's take a selfie sort of gym people, except those ones seemed actually fit. At the same time, all the other super hot girls and guys, especially the guys, were very nice to me and didn't seem to care that I rode up front, whereas Valerie and Boris would always shoot these sideward disgusted glances at me or smirk. I'm not a confrontational person, so I wouldn't do the thing most people would do in that situation, such as say, "What the frick is your problem, B?" I always got to class super early to dress up and adjust my bike. The gym has a policy, first come, first serve, when it comes to choosing one of the 30 bikes in the studio. I noticed a lot of other people who show up early who are also clearly less fit than the stars that occupy the first couple of rows, but they seem to self-segregate into the very back. I was still new, as it was my first couple of weeks, so I sat up front because I was still finding my rhythm. I'd sit right up front where the instructor told me so that I could watch him and he could watch me. Every time he would come in, he would greet me enthusiastically and praise me for my commitment to fitness. It was little wonder why his class was so popular. Everyone held him in high regard. Sometimes in class, he would shout encouragements to the class as a whole, but also gave personal shout outs to certain students, despite the darkness of the room. When the instructor said, "Great job there, OP, you're killing it," I noticed both Boris and Valerie give each other a look and shake their heads, laughing. I never knew for sure why Valerie hated me, but I think it might be because we were both Russian and no one else who went to that early class seemed to be, and she wanted to be the only Eastern European girl. Who knows? As for Boris, he followed Valerie because he wanted to get in her pants. Boris and Valerie usually showed up right when class was starting and the whole place was packed, and yet they were so entitled that there were always two bikes up front right next to each other reserved for them. Despite the crowd at 5:30 a.m., there were still a couple of empty bikes in the middle or back, but that wasn't good enough for them. I'd be right in the front row too. I got there early and it was my right to sit wherever I please, and yet despite them showing up at the last second, they shake their heads at me like I'm the one who's got a lot of nerve. Well, this goes on day after day for a whole month, and despite the fact that I'm no longer new and starting to get more fit and don't really need the instructor so much just to survive the hour on the bike, I still sit right up front. I thought maybe the particular bike that I was selecting had some significance to Valerie or Boris, and that's why they copped up such an attitude all the time. I always rode on the same bike. By this time, I was a bit chummy with a lot of the other women and knew their names, and we'd hug in the morning. I thought I should make peace with Valerie, if not Boris, who always gave me a "I hate you because Valerie hates you, but if there was no Valerie, I'd totally go out with you" type of vibe. So when I saw Valerie that morning, as usual, she showed up right when class started and sat next to me. I politely asked, "Was this your bike before and you were used to it? We can trade if you'd like." She rolls her eyes at me and gives Boris a look, and like a donkey, he smirks too. She actually says,
You should sit in the back. We're moving people up here and you're hogging the mirror space.
There was a whole wall mirror in front of the classroom. I'm thinking, what is this, high school? What the heck? You've got to be 30 years old and you're acting like this? And seriously, you may be fitter than me, but I'm just as tall and I don't weigh any more than you do or take up any more space in the mirror, and it wouldn't matter even if I did. We're adults, or at least I am. That's what I wish I said. Instead, I just put my head down and went on with my class. Eventually, I got so familiar with the other students because the same regulars would come to class every day that we all became friends on social media. I even became social media friends with the instructor. I don't post much on social media. I don't show where I work or every single thing I do or my random brain farts. I just post the occasional photo. On one of these rare photos where I was admittedly begging for approval because I was proud of developing abs, the spin instructor himself commented how proud he was of me. A lot of people from spin class also said nice things. I was friends with neither Valerie nor Boris on social media, but they both liked the instructor's comment on my photo. And my guess is because they both like to kiss his butt. They certainly never showed me any kindness in class, unlike everyone else who was supportive of me. I clicked on their names and my suspicions were confirmed. Both of them practically lived on social media and took endless selfies showing off their body and humble bragging non-stop. They also made no secret of who their employers were. Valerie tried to claim that she was a model, even though it was clear her only real job was being a sales rep for a beauty brand. Valerie was only a model in the take a picture of yourself using your iPhone in front of the bathroom mirror sense. So Valerie, I guess that makes me a model too. These two were such idiots that they'd post really dumb things on each other's walls. It didn't seem like they really had lives other than to talk trash trash about people. I saw that they had one exchange where they were clearly talking about me. How do I know? Because they actually said my name and said that I was ugly and a wannabe and skinny fat and all this other horrible stuff. They also talked a lot about other people in the class and said horrible things and actually named names. It doesn't seem like they were friendly with the other people, even the very fit people who in some cases were even fitter. In terms of the class, they were social media friends with the instructor and some of the other teachers on the schedule, and with each other, but not anyone else. Anyway, I actually confirmed my suspicion that Boris was low-key thirsty. After the spin instructor made a nice comment on my picture and Boris saw that I existed online, he sent me a private message asking me to go for coffee sometime. I ignored the message, which is just as well because the next time in class he ignored me and just followed Valerie's normal smirk and routine. I don't like to start drama, but I don't like being bullied and trashed either. I screen captured and saved a lot of both Valerie and Boris's comments where they trashed at least a dozen people in our class and then made a dummy Facebook account. I fired off every screen capture to the owner of the studio, not just the manager of that particular branch, but the owner of the whole company in addition to the branch manager. I let them know that these two cretins were trashing many people in the morning class and creating a hostile, unwelcome environment. I was also nice enough to send the appropriate screen captures where Boris and Valerie named specific people in the class to those actual people they named, if their accounts weren't set up where only friends could message them or post on their feeds. In less than a week, Boris and Valerie were gone. Both had their memberships revoked and were banned from every one of the brand's studios. Several of the people that Valerie insulted were sufficiently offended that they sent emails to Valerie's employer. Valerie, as previously mentioned, made no secret of where she worked, about what a hateful, body-shaming person she was, and how such a person should not be any kind of brand ambassador. From what the other girls in the studio tell me, Valerie got fired from her job. Don't worry, Valerie, you still have your modeling career of taking selfies in your panties next to your toilet in your apartment. I had the pleasure of seeing some of the less patient, ripped, buff dudes in class who didn't find it amusing that Boris was telling Valerie on Facebook that he could beat up anyone in class, openly offering to let him test his theory anytime, anywhere. Unfortunately, Boris was too occupied up front getting his membership canceled and being refunded and being told to never come back please to make such arrangements. See ya, jerk. Boris had a wannabe unlicensed personal training business that he talked about on Facebook, and several of the men in the class who had legit training certificates shut him down with a quickness. There's always Starbucks. Maybe I'll go for coffee sometime and buy it from you, Boris Ista. As for me, I still show up early, but I usually find my comfort zone in row 2 now, or even further back. There's always new students and I like for them to sit right up front so they feel welcome. That's what it means to be in a fitness community. Everyone's welcome. This isn't some kind of high school cafeteria. You can't sit with us nonsense. I love the class so much I kept going into 2019 as a paying member, even after my free year was finished. In 18 months, I've posted pictures related to the spin class. That 4-pack is coming in nicely. Lol. From certain angles anyway. Goals. I haven't smoked in ages. I still drink like a fish. It's the Russian in me, I think. I honestly hope Boris and Valerie grew up. I low-key hope they marry because they deserve each other. Though I also hope they don't breed, because that much narcissism from two parents would result in a kid with a lot of issues. So am I the jerk for taking revenge on my two bullies? The little detail that stands out to me here is the fact that Boris asked the original poster out for coffee. So at some point, he must have been willing to lose his relationship with Valerie if he was able to hop from that ship into the ship of the original poster. But then she didn't respond, so he just went back to acting like normal. If she said yes to going out for coffee, would he really have been prepared to go against Valerie? Then suddenly Boris is no longer the bully, he would be the boyfriend if they got together because of that. I also get the sense that there's some sort of weird love triangle going on where Boris likes Valerie, but Valerie, even though we don't get any direct hints, maybe is into the instructor of the class. And because of that, she already dislikes everyone else in the class, but she hates the OP because the instructor is showing the OP attention. But outside of all of that, it's just really sad when people try and put down others that are trying to get into better shape. One of the quotes in response that really fits here is, mocking overweight people at the gym is like mocking alcoholics in AA. The fact that the OP is there means that she's trying. She's she's working on healthier habits. And the vast majority of people are encouraging about that, or at the very least will stay out of her way. So that's why I think the issue isn't really that the OP is out of shape and Valerie hates her for that for some reason. There's probably something more to this, like jealousy on the part of the OP receiving attention from the instructor. Or if not, if she's really just making fun of her because she's out of shape and she's in this spin class, then maybe she's just that insecure. But let me know how you interpret this whole situation. Do you think that her revenge on the bullies was going too far, or was it justified? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for being upset that my wealthy boyfriend got me a cheap gift? I'm a 21-year-old female. My boyfriend is also 21. He comes from a wealthy family, and I am from a middle-class family. His family went on a cruise, and all the siblings and their significant others came along. I was happy to be there and very grateful that his parents invited me. At one point, everyone was sitting down together, and my boyfriend started bringing out gifts. His parents and siblings and their significant others got things like watches, dresses, fine wines, and other clearly expensive things. When he got to me, he gave me one of those plastic bracelets with their company name on it. You can get those at the company's main headquarters for free. I was a little taken aback and a little embarrassed, but didn't want to be rude. Everyone was kind of looking at me in a way that they were both amused and also pitiful. I didn't want to complain, so I said thanks and moved on. When we got inside, I asked my boyfriend what that was about, and he told me to be grateful and stop complaining because he always gets me nice gifts, which is true. I just stopped pushing it because I felt like I was being selfish, and he did have a point. I feel like what he did was very degrading. He could have gotten me no gift at all, and that would have been less humiliating. I feel like trash for feeling this way. He's always been mindful, and I don't understand why he did that. It made me feel cheap in front of everyone. I don't know. Am I the jerk for feeling this way or even bringing it up? But before you decide, here's a little more information. Me and my guy have been dating for 2 years. His family and I get along very well. His parents paid for the cruise for everyone. Somebody pointed out that it's actually called a yacht and not a cruise. It's his family's yacht and his parents paid for us, meaning they paid for the chefs, the butlers, the plane tickets to come out to that place. I didn't know there was a difference, minor detail, but yeah. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I straight up asked him what went through his mind when he did that. I told him I've been thinking about it ever since we came back from the trip. Why was he even giving out gifts? Why did he give me that? Why did he think it was okay? And actually, nobody guessed what the reason was correctly, and neither did I. He was giving out gifts because he wanted to give me a big gift, and I was supposed to be the last one. He actually had managed to set up a date with me and this adorable cat that I follow on TikTok. The owner lives close near the harbor where we'd be stopping, and I've loved this cat since 2020 when we first started dating. I still stalk the page regularly, but the owner had backed out last minute even after charging a ton of money. We were supposed to meet soon, but he didn't have a gift for me and basically got scammed. He said what he did was stupid, and he just took a bracelet out last minute to save face, but now he realizes it was stupid. As for his comments, he apologized and said he has no excuse. He said he was more angry with himself and the cat owner and just took it out on me. I understood and forgave him because it was out of character, and I know he just wanted to do something nice for me. So, was I the jerk for being disappointed with the cheap gift that my wealthy boyfriend gave me? When the boyfriend first gave the OP that gift and then later on said that she should be grateful and stop complaining because he always gets her nice gifts, I immediately thought that this was some sort of test, like those gold digger pranks you see, or sometimes they call them gratitude tests to see if somebody will be happy even when they get a gift that's not great. There was actually a video that a lot of people were sharing recently where a guy brings a girl to McDonald's and he's filming her in the car, and she gets upset and says, "I thought you were taking me out to eat," because she's all dressed up. And the guy says, "Yeah, I am. This is where we're gonna eat, at McDonald's." But at the last moment, her disappointment turns into sort of a gratitude because she says, "Oh, they have great fries here." And then all the comments in response to that say, "She passed the vibe check. She passed the vibe check." So I definitely thought this was the direction it was going since he was so defensive, but the whole thing just happened because the cat owner canceled on him and he was frustrated. So he actually was angry at her in that moment, it sounds like, because he said he had no excuse for his comment there. So if your significant other gave you a gift like this, would it bother you or would you be fine with it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for bringing my sister-in-law's wallet to the restaurant when she conveniently always forgets it? I'm a 28-year-old female, and my sister-in-law Amy, who's 26, always comes to visit from out of town. She stays with us instead of at a hotel and always wants to go to expensive restaurants. She always conveniently forgets her wallet or comes up with excuses as to why she can't pay her share. She has implied since I make much more money than her, I should be the one to pay. No, not my husband should pay, but me specifically. I do make a fair amount of money, but not so much that I can treat someone every time they come into town. Nonetheless, in the past, I have just paid the bill and asked her to pay me back, and she never has. She had made a reservation at an extremely expensive restaurant last night, and before we left, I made it clear that I wouldn't be paying her bill. This is where I might be the jerk. I'll admit I got this move straight from an episode of 2.5 Men. As we were leaving, her and her husband went to the car. I pretended to forget something and went back inside. I found her wallet sitting right on top of her suitcase. I put it in my purse and we went to the restaurant. When we were done eating, I asked for separate bills. She said no, we need one bill because she forgot her wallet again. I reached into my purse and said, "This wallet?" She was extremely furious. She said that I should not have touched or grabbed her wallet. So, am I the jerk for taking her wallet and bringing it to the restaurant? I'm surprised that she would even continue to go eat out with her sister-in-law again after all this. Or if she did, as some people pointed out, bring her wallet but don't bring your wallet, so there's no choice but for her to pay for the whole bill. And as somebody said, if you do that, then just never go to eat at a restaurant with her again. But honestly, this is some shady behavior from the sister-in-law. She's purposely trying to engineer these situations so that she can get delicious food and then put the bill on someone else every time. The OP is obviously married into the family, so she doesn't get a choice on who the sister-in-law is, but you still get a choice on who you want to spend your time with. Let me know how you would handle this down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. A Karen on a plane thinks that she is entitled to a first-class upgrade for free after booking the aisle seat and the window seat, but not the middle seat, and then getting furious that she didn't get the middle seat included because she had the aisle and the window. The middle seat was my seat. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Due to a new procurement process at work nobody cares about, I booked a flight to my conference destination really late. All that was left were middle seats, or ponying up personally, for an upgrade which wasn't going to happen for a relatively short flight. Out in the boarding area, they announced many times that it was a full flight and kept begging people to gate check their bags. It was not subtle. After they let all the military, first class, frequent flyers, and blah 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 blah, more time needed people board, my group got to plot down the jetway. Once we got to the plane, I could see my fate before me. A wild Karen was sitting in an aisle seat. The middle was piled with Karen crap. A backpack, electronic devices, stuffed animals, snacks, and a miniature Karen was over in the window seat, happily kicking the empty seat in front of her so hard it was visibly shaking. That's, I count the rows, definitely mine. When I got to the row, I pointed to the middle seat to indicate that it's mine. Karen did not budge or move a single thing from her crap hinge. I tried again with the whole, "I'm sorry, that's my seat" routine. She snapped at me and said,
"You sit somewhere else."
I say, "I can't do that. It's a full flight. This is my assigned seat." Well, Karen wasn't having that. Did I know what kind of day she'd had? It had started the day before. Their flight was diverted. They missed their connection. They slept in the airport overnight. They just needed a little space. Sit somewhere else, is basically what she told me. And she shoved her knees up full against the seat in front of her, blocking my way before she loaded it with Karen Cruft in the middle seat. Then she shut her eyes and pretended to be asleep. I slammed the flight attendant button over her head and awkwardly crouched in the row behind so people can get past me. We'd already made a scene and clogged up boarding. As I crouched there, I realized nothing about Karen's story made sense. We weren't at the big city airport where flights sometimes get diverted. We were at the tiny regional airport that only had a couple of airlines that flew to a few major hubs. No connections happened there. There also wasn't a bunch of other people griping about missed connections, diversions, or having slept in the airport. When a tiny regional airport has that happen, you know. Everybody knows. Karen was probably lying. Anyhow, the saintly flight attendant arrived to ask what was wrong. She checked my ticket. Yeah, that was unfortunately my seat. Then she asked Karen to see her and the kids' tickets. Karen kept her eyes closed and continued to pretend to be asleep. I don't know how she thought that would work, but the flight attendant shook her shoulder several times and began speaking loudly to her. You must remember, boarding is going on all around this. People were hefting bags, trying to find seats, and the usual loud mayhem. It was ridiculous. The flight attendant told Karen that if she didn't respond, paramedics would be called about an unresponsive passenger. That got Karen's attention. She popped up and demanded,
"What? I'm trying to sleep!"
and then went off on the same rant she did at me about her travel nightmare and needing the space. The flight attendant explained that it was a full flight. All of the seats were booked. Standby passengers were waiting for any extras, and Karen needed to let me sit. This sent Karen into wails over being separated from her baby by a stranger. The flight attendant pointed out that she booked the aisle and the window seats herself, leaving that separation, so she could either ask me to swap or sit in them as assigned. That sent off another rant. Apparently, some frequent flyer / travel advice site out there says to book the window and aisle and hope nobody sits in the middle so that you get a free space. I imagine this works on flights that aren't full. This one was full. Karen swore that she got that tip for how to get an extra seat free off the airline's website and threw quite a fit after they told her to do that. She was being punished by being separated from her baby. Meanwhile, the people on the row in front arrived and the mini Karen was still kicking away like she was at soccer practice. It was so bad the guy in the window seat didn't even want to sit down. He leaned over and asked the kid to stop kicking. Mini Karen let out an unholy wail of "Stranger!" that she had apparently been trained to do if a stranger spoke to her. Karen turned from her screaming fit at the flight attendant to take in the scene of an adult man in the row in front of her looking at her child in horror and the child wailing "Stranger!" at the top of her lungs, only to turn right back to the flight attendant while pointing at that dude and demanding, "Get this speedo off the plane immediately!" That's where the flight attendant went from firm and reasonable to utterly brilliant. She sagely nodded at Karen and said, "We can't remove him from the flight because he hasn't done anything to your child, but we can certainly get you two reseated if you're not comfortable with your current location and situation. Gather your things, we'll take you up to the desk and see if there are any upgrades available for more spacious seats." It was amazing. Karen puffed up in self-importance as she gathered her now happy spawn and all their crap. She threw elbows like mad, shoving her way upstream past all the people still trying to board the plane. She'd heard the magic word upgrade, and she was going to get there before it was gone. I sort of cursed to myself that they were probably upgrading her to make her calm down. I was not thrilled that her ridiculous display worked. Then the flight attendant's co-worker came back to ask if I preferred the window or aisle to my middle seat. Aisle, thanks. At least I got that, right? Well, it got better. The flight attendant's co-worker explained that I could relax because Karen and the entitled kid would not be returning. There were no upgrades. It was faster and easier to get them off the flight that way than calling security. They filled the seats with waiting standby passengers, and presumably Karen had plenty of space to sit next to her mini Karen in the terminal while waiting for the next flight. Well played, flight attendants. Well played. I've actually heard a lot of people talk about this strategy of getting the window seat and the aisle seat and hoping nobody will book the middle of it, but I don't know if that actually works. In this case, it didn't because the flight was full, but the Karen in the situation was really counting on it working. She's trying to say that the airline itself is the one who said to do this, which is hilarious. Not that somebody who worked for the airline told her, but that it's actually on the airline's website. So she's probably lying about that. She's probably lying about having missed her flight and having to spend the night in the airport. She's lying about pretending to be asleep as if that would make a difference if you were asleep or not. And then she calls that guy a speedo. It is very weird how that's a lot of people's go-to in a situation where they either need to get a lot of attention or they need to get out of the situation. Yeah, just point at a random person and call them a speedo. That'll take all the heat off of you. So let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I was severely bullied because of my orientation, so I got revenge. I am an athletic gay guy, and I always have been. I was born and raised in Texas, so you can imagine some of the going-ons in my younger years when being gay was less accepted. This was a little over 10 years ago. Freshman year, I'm on the basketball team. I'm not good, not great, just average. The team also takes up a class period, and on some days we have to study instead of practice. One of the kids on the team, M, would constantly give me crap about being gay, calling me an F slur, a queer, and all of the usual slurs. I, always being a pretty amiable guy and extremely slow to action, accepted his insults with open arms. arms. Although I wasn't the star player, among people who knew me, I made sure my nickname was the F slur. I'd always answer yes to everyone who asked, does booty taste good? Or do you have a body count? I never let it show, but this constant disrespect towards me and other people, including teachers, really got to me. He would harass my friends, pick on the boys, catcall, and make lewd comments to the girls. He was the kind of kid who'd do a fake, yes sir, to a teacher who was getting onto him about something. That's when a little birdie told me his dad died 3 years ago and his mom was a lush, a drinker. Despite the fact that I now had this knowledge, I held on to it until I had my chance. M liked to shove people around, but he never did me because I was pretty popular and matched him physically. Like I said, that didn't stop him from picking on people close to me. I started preparing for the fight I knew would come. Working bags, learning footing, all the good stuff. After 3 months of preparation, I felt ready. He came upon me in the bathroom, talked some smack, I don't remember. There were a few of his buddies. Perfect. Remember how I said his dad died? Well, I used that and said, okay, daddy issues, can I call you that? Is not having one really considered a daddy issue? By the way, why are you so fixated on gay things? Why do you ask so many questions? Do you want to try it out? Or was the last thing your dad did to teach you about doming? Admittedly, not the best as I type it out, but it was mean enough. This got him enraged. All the better. He charged at me through the narrow part of the bathroom. My back was to the wall and he was moving too fast. I got out of the way and he harmlessly flung himself against the wall. Harmlessly for him and me. Well, not for long. He had to shift his weight. I to the side. He had already done so. It was a one-punch KO to the side of the jaw. This guy had never been in a real fight before. It only took me raising a middle finger at the 3 friends that he had brought in with him to make them reconsider their dedication to the mission at hand. Next, I soccer ball kicked, shoe to face, while he was down 4 times. My shoes were smeared with blood. A few more kicks downstairs after that, spat on the back of his head, and walked away. I never talked to M again. I never cared how he was doing, but today I had seen his face and it certainly wasn't the one he had been born with. Naturally, word of the fight spread around and I got in some big trouble. I was suspended, but the motto, don't mess with the F slur, spread around real quick. As far as I know, nobody ever did. This was a lot more intense than I expected. Unfortunately, there are certain situations in life where you can't be passive. You have to do something in response to something happening to you, or else it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. That doesn't mean you have to go through with what he did here. There's probably other ways, but maybe he felt like there was no other option and he wanted to nip it in the bud before it got even worse. But let me know how you see this situation. Do you think it was going too far, or do you think he had no other options? Let me know down below. I am breaking off my engagement because my fiance might get sick in the future. My fiance and I have been together for 5 years. He's the love of my life, and I literally can't imagine being without him. So the thought of doing this is making my stomach roll. He was adopted, and neither he nor his parents knew much about his medical history. A few weeks ago, he met his biological brother for the first time and found out that his birth father had passed from Huntington's disease. There is a 50% chance that my fiance also has the genetic defect that causes Huntington's, but he refuses to get tested. It's not the disease that I'm scared of, it's the not knowing. If we know he'll get it, we can prepare financially, practically, and emotionally. He says a positive test will hold him back from living his life, but I feel like it's the opposite. How can we live with this giant maybe looming over us? How can I make smart decisions on where to live, how to budget, or even whether or not to have biological children with this man if I'm not allowed to have all the facts? So I've come to the decision that I have to break it off. I respect his decision, but I can't understand or accept it. I have literally no one I can talk to about it because it's his secret and not mine to tell. I have to go to work now, but I'll continue to respond to questions throughout the day, especially to the comments that exactly mirror the dissenting voice in my head. I just want to clarify a few things first. Number 1, I would not leave him if he was tested positive for the defect. I would not leave him if he got sick. I just want to plan for us to be able to afford the best life and care for him if he does, which means we'd have to start immediately. Number 2, I don't want or need perfect children. That isn't realistic, but it is possible to avoid them being subjected to a 50-50 chance of having this disease. Of course, there are alternative options, but again, they involve preparation and planning. I'm more than willing to take a full genetic panel as well. Number 3, yes, one or both of us could get cancer or permanently disabled in an accident, or any number of things, but I've come to learn that you can't plan for every unpredictable thing life throws at you. This is the rare occasion that we do have the opportunity to prepare. there. Number 4, essentially it comes down to the fact that we are incompatible. Regardless of how much we love each other, I'm a planner and he's very laid back. Until now, these traits have complemented each other, but unfortunately they've brought us to an impasse that I don't think we can both move forward from happily. I'm floored at all of these responses, supportive and otherwise. At the very least, I feel validated that this is a complex issue with no clear and obvious answer. I've decided to take a few steps back. Those of you who brought up the fact that a few weeks is probably too little time for him to fully process his possible diagnosis have a really valid point. Just because I want to immediately jump into problem solving mode doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to do here. So I'm not leaving yet, at least, and hopefully never. I'm going to find a therapist to help me work through my anxieties and give my fiance some space, not literally, to work through this. And then we'll revisit this conversation, hopefully with more patience on my part and willingness to act on his. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I'm not sure if it was obvious, but I was not in a good place when I made that post. When I stress, I don't sleep or eat. For him, it may have only been a few weeks to accept the situation, but for me, it was a few weeks of non-stop anxiety, where I was lucky to get even an hour of restless sleep at night. I was plain exhausted on top of everything else, and only began to consider leaving when I started to hit my breaking point. Anyway, we talked about it at length. We cried, we fought, we researched. I showed him empathy, we consulted with friends, family, specialists. We pressed pause for days or weeks when we needed a break from the whole thing. And in the end, he agreed to have the test. Guys, to say we dodged an absolute maelstrom of bullets would be putting it mildly. He's negative for both the developing disease himself as well as the risk of passing it on. No matter what else happens, this is one area where he's assuredly safe. All of this said, once the euphoria faded, we decided that it was necessary to put a hold on our engagement and take some time apart. I still love him with all my heart, but this was our first serious disagreement as a couple, and it forced us to seriously reflect on ourselves and our relationship. Neither of our positions were wrong, but they were so disparate that there was no realistic compromise. I spent the last few months traveling abroad, and other than a few texts, we haven't spoken much, but I'm home now and we have our second first date tonight. Wish me luck. Here are the answers to a few of the final questions. Number 1, I mentioned this a million times in my first post, but here it goes again. I had no plans to leave him if he tested positive. I just needed to know so that we could plan our lives accordingly. Number 2, we decided together to take a break. It's been an incredibly difficult, emotionally charged roller coaster of a year. I didn't leave him. Number 3, we planned from day 1 to keep communication to a minimum. It was difficult. I actually began keeping a journal of all the things I wanted to call or text him about. It's extensive and I can't wait to share it with him. Number 4, I didn't give him an ultimatum, but I understand why that's the takeaway. I only said here that I was thinking of leaving and I know that it was rash and irrational. So was I the jerk for how I handled the situation? It seems like no matter how many times the OP here said that she would stay with him, even if he was positive, even if he did get sick, people don't really seem to hear that part. As she said many times already, she just wants to know so she can plan accordingly. I know that some people doubted that, saying that she would just find another excuse to leave once they found out that he was positive, but there's not really anything to suggest that that's what she would do. She's saying the exact opposite of that. I think it would be really tough to live under this constant looming impending doom that may or may not come. That's kind of why it's one of the most popular would you rather questions about if you could know the exact day that you would die, would you choose to know that information or would you choose not to know that information? I'll actually put that up as a poll in the community post section of the channel. Some people argue that knowing the exact day would make it so that they would live their life to the fullest, and other people argue that knowing it will hold them back from living their lives. I mean, the exact words were, he says a positive test result will hold him back from living his life, but I feel like it's the opposite. So when it comes to this specific topic, they are fundamentally in two opposing camps. I'm glad to hear that ultimately he didn't have it, but how would you have handled the situation? Let me know down below. Am I the jerk for leaving the restaurant before my boyfriend's family arrived after I was told that I was going to pay for their meals? I'm a 29-year-old female and I've been dating my boyfriend who's 35, Ricky, for 5 months. He's divorced but hates this word and goes with the word divorcee instead because the first word, divorced, makes it sound like he was dumped when it was him who initiated it. Anyways, he always goes on long rants about his exes and says stuff like, I hope you don't have this awful habit my ex has, or I hope you like X, Y, and Z because my ex didn't, and the list goes on. I found a second job recently and he's been having me pay every time we go out. When I protest, he'd say he's going through a rough patch and is seeing how much help I can offer. Last night, he invited his family to join us for dinner. We got to the restaurant first. He asked me if I brought enough money. I said, why? And he told me that he told his parents that I'd pay for their meals. I said, why would I? And he went on about his parents going through a rough patch just like him. I said, I'm sorry, this can't be a coincidence. He asked what I meant and I told him that I would not be paying. He insisted. I refused and said no. He then leaned back and said, well, you're here, so not much of a choice you have anyway. He said this while laughing like it was funny. I silently got up, took my phone and my purse, and I walked right out. He was shocked. He started shouting after me to stop and wait, but I didn't. I went home and he called me in rage, saying that I did a horrible thing walking out on him and his parents while I could have just paid. I told him that their unfortunate financial situation isn't my problem and that I wasn't obliged to pay for their food. If they couldn't pay for their meals, then they should not go out. He got offended and said, and I quote, "You're making money a priority just like my ex did." Then he went on about how disrespectful my attitude was and how I made him look small in front of his parents and forced him to lie about why I wasn't there when they came. We've been going back and forth about it until now. He's mad and is refusing to speak to me until I apologize. I feel bad because his parents are lovely and I've been doing my best to keep a good relationship with them. So, am I the jerk? Right out the gate, just the fact that the boyfriend is comparing the OP to his ex-girlfriends is already pretty toxic. There's one thing to talk about it and say, hey, these things really bothered me about these other people in the past, but to say you better not be like this, you better not be like that, you better be like this is not healthy at all. Really, for either side, because with the boyfriend, it creates this sort of untrue portrait of the person that he's dating, and for the girlfriend, obviously, she's in a position where she has to constantly contort herself to be what he's describing and to not be what he's describing as well. And then on top of all of that, he's trying to set her up to pay for everything, which is also weird. Let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A man in his 60s named Richard has a dispute with his HOA, the Homeowners Association. They don't like his lawn, so they try and send their own landscapers out in order to fix it. When they do that, they send Richard an invoice for it. Richard doesn't like that at all. So the next time the HOA tries to send landscapers to his house, he blocks access so the landscapers can't get to it. The HOA sends him the invoice anyway, and it happens again and again. After a year, he has so many invoices that the HOA has sent him for this whole landscaping situation that the debt crushes him and he loses his house. It's foreclosed on. Before he's forced to leave, he utterly destroys the house from the inside, and then he does the unthinkable. He goes back to the HOA and takes the lives of its members. When asked why he did this, he said, "I was getting even." Here's what happened in this horrible situation. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So to start off, this is a pretty old story that I remember not long after I moved out to the backwater armpit of Satan that we call Arizona, and was instrumental in my parents not buying a house in a neighborhood with an HOA initially. So here's the backstory. This part of the story takes place shortly before the year 2000. In my state, we have numerous retiree communities that are run by HOAs, homeowners associations. The vast majority of them, in my experience, are as a respite and habilitation provider that can be summarized simply as near to full on tyrannical in their inter-community politics, often targeting members out of the clique, while heavily favoring those who fell in line. In this case, it started with Richard and the new HOA board, henceforth going to be abbreviated as NHB, New HOA Board, for convenience sake. Richard had lived in his house in the community under the prior HOA board for close to 10 years. Before that, a community mailbox was installed near his driveway and had the borders of his house lined with row hedges. These two details will be important later. However, around early 2000, a new HOA governing board was elected. By this time, many others had moved into the area and began parking in front of the aforementioned mailbox, a number of which, to my memory, were NHB board members. Richard had at first tried talking to the offending mailbox blockers that would block his driveway. Eventually, however, he would resort to simply parking his car in front of the driveway and, by extension, the mailboxes. In retaliation, the NHB would tow his car and invoice Richard for it. In addition to this, Richard was not the type to constantly preen and prune his hedges around around his house or keep the lawn well kept. The HOA as a result began sending landscapers to trim them for him and would naturally invoice him every time they did for the bill. Richard both verbally and in writing in rather rude terms requested they not send them and denied the landscapers access to his house, but he was still invoiced for their being contracted even though they were sent away. Eventually, as I remember, the NHB would send the landscapers to his home when he was away or not home and then still invoice him the costs after. Finally, having enough, Richard ended up killing off his lawn and hedges to force the NHB to stop sending landscapers, but due to laws in my state and the NHB's bylaws, they were able to sue for the cost of all the invoices sent over the course of nearly a year or so and managed to foreclose on Richard's house for the unpaid fees. So he was forced to move out and chose to move to California for a time. This is where the revenge begins. With the events leading up to the nuclear revenge set in place, now we can discuss Richard's revenge. Richard had practically been living out of a trailer for a little while stewing over his treatments at the hands of his former NHB. Richard had still owned a storage unit in Arizona, which contained his arms, a boomstick, and 2 semi-auto gats. That April, he returned to Arizona with one goal in mind: revenge. Richard's former HOA held official meetings bi-yearly, with other smaller meetings for emergencies or when voted to convene. Richard entered the NHB's meeting with his arms, opened fire, and ended the life of 2 board members outright, wounding one more and wounding another during a scuffle with another man trying to wrestle his boomstick away from him. When Richard was later questioned why he committed the crime, his only response was, "I was getting even." Later, Richard was sentenced to death for the murders, but he ended up passing away of natural causes while still on death row. In the end, the HOA was disbanded for some time following the wake of the murders. They have at this point reestablished, but from what I recall, they've been quite careful who they elect to the board. And that's the story as I remember it. Sorry if some details are a little vague, sparse, or slightly off. These events happened almost 20 years ago now, and I was fairly young at the time. Having only been told the story later by my father and friends and a little side research of my own, I thought it might fit well. So if for some reason you don't believe this story, this is one of the stories that actually had news coverage. So there's a few different articles on this if you want to read more. I'll leave links to them on the Am I the Jerk Discord and on the Am I the Jerk Twitter. Whatever is more convenient for you if you want to read more. So obviously, it goes without saying that the way that Richard handled this is never the way to handle anything, clearly. But how would you handle a situation where you own a house and it gets foreclosed on because of invoices that the HOA is sending to you from these landscapers? So let's break this down. In a lot of these stories where people are pushed to the brink, it always seems like eventually one of these people is just going to totally snap, and that's exactly what happened in this story. He pretty much threw his life away by ending their lives. Obviously, we don't get to hear from his perspective, so we don't know what type of mindset that he was in going into all of this. Not that that would ever excuse it, but if I had to guess, I would say he was probably coming from a place of desperation. In one of the articles, it says that he was 61 years old. And as a lot of you guys know, financial wipeouts tend to be more devastating the older you are because it's the less time you have to rebuild. And this was not only a financial wipeout, but he no longer had a place to live anymore. In the article, they got some quotes from one of the people that was in the room, a 76-year-old guy who said he just came in, stood in the rear of the room, and started firing. I mean, hearing that is so sad that people would have to go through that. In another section of the same article, it says that before he left after his home was sold, neighbors and others said he destroyed his interior, sawing through cabinets and removing the dishwasher and the kitchen sink. A former associate vice president that they got this quote from said he took a chainsaw to the doors, took a chainsaw to the plastic tub, and the plastic shower stall. He also etched big X's on the Arcadia doors, pulled down the sheetrock, cut the wiring in the walls. So he went full on nuclear when he lost his home. If you've ever been evicted, you can probably relate to how powerless you feel, especially if you're really young and you don't have the means to save the situation. That happened to me when I was a lot younger too, but we never destroyed anything. We just left it as it was. I hear stories about people putting cockroach babies in the floors and bugs in the walls and cement down the drains, all sorts of stuff to try and completely make the house uninhabitable for the next person. So let me know how you see this situation. Obviously what he did is not the right answer, but what do you think would have been? Let me know what you think down below. I won over $5,000 in court because of a car accident that I caused. So for a little information before I get into the story, I'm a 22-year-old male, I work in construction, I run a few crews, and I'm a foreman because I've been working in this field since I started working summers when I was 14 years old. That's legal in my state. With this being said, I have a lot of experience and I get paid really well. For my job, I need a truck that can pull a lot of trailers and also get into a lot of sketchy job sites, especially in the winter. So I drive a new lifted pickup F350. Anyway, let's get into it. So about 4 months ago now, I got off of work one day and I just really didn't feel like making dinner. So I decided to get myself the trusty Big Mac at McDonald's. Well, after I got my order, I was going to pull out into the parking lot to drive home, and I was looking hard over my left to see how busy the road was before I got there. Well, I wasn't paying great attention to what was happening in front of me, and as I was creeping forward, someone who was in front of me was stopped and not paying attention either. I ended up barely hitting his mirror and scraping his door with my front end. I immediately reversed and hopped out. I made sure the guy was okay and apologized, knowing that it was my fault, and I asked him if he wanted to call the cops. Let's call this guy Brent. Brent says,
Nah, bro, we're good. If you could just get me your insurance info, I think we could get this taken care of.
I was fine with that as there was no damage done to my truck and it's not required to call the cops for an accident if it occurs in a private parking lot. This is relevant later. We exchanged information and he seemed pretty cool. So I tell him to go get the damage bid and I'll just pay in cash so my insurance rates don't go up as long as he's okay with it. He says that's fine and we both just leave and I feel like a moron, but all in all, Brent seems like a cool dude and I just hope we can get it sorted out smoothly. About a month passes by and I haven't heard anything from Brent or the shop that I told him to go to. Honestly, I wasn't too stressed about this because if he decided not to get it done, that's on him. Well, he calls me one day at about noon saying he can't remember my name and he wanted to tell the guys at the shop who sent him there because it seemed like we knew each other. I told him my name and the guys at the shop gave him a deal. Pretty sure they say this to everyone. He sends me the bid for the damages and it comes out to $2,403. This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done and I'd take care of the bill afterward, and that was that. He hung up, said it was cool, and I went on with my day as usual. Another month goes by and I don't hear anything until Brent calls me up while I'm at work again and says,
Hey brother, I talked to the shop and they said they can't get me in for another 2 weeks or so, and they may end up charging me more if they find more damage.
I say, okay, sounds good. Just let me know, man. I hope it goes smooth for you and I'm sorry for the inconvenience. He seemed to take it good and I'm really just trying to be a good person. He responds with,
Well, after talking to my wife, I'm okay if you just wanted to write a check for $2,500 and we can call it even.
This seemed odd to me because why wouldn't someone want their vehicle repairs all paid for? I say, okay man, let's set a time and place to meet and I'll get you paid. He liked the idea and ended the call by telling me he would let me know. Yet another month passes by and I hear nothing. At this point, I'm getting fed up and I just want the situation to stop being over my head. He hits me up at 11 p.m. one night and asks if we can meet in town. I found this kind of disrespectful because I was nearly asleep and I had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. Either way, I said that was fine and took my $2,500 cash and wrote up a quick contract saying this payment would be accepted as payment in full for the damages, and by accepting it, it would release me from any and all liability. This was a pretty fair contract, I believe, as it was the deal we had already made over the phone, just in writing. I get to the place we suggested as a meetup spot, I give him the cash, and he signs the contract without hardly even reading it, and he didn't want the copy. This was a red flag to me, but I just assumed he really didn't care about it all that much, so I just sent him the photo of the contract and go back home for some beauty sleep. And as you can guess by now, another month goes by with me just living life carefree and not a worry in the world about this stupid car accident, while I go to check my mail and I have a notice from this guy's lawyer that he is suing me for not paying after wrecking his car. This pissed me off, but I also knew I had plenty of text messages and a contract on my side. I immediately called Brent and he blocks my number. Luckily enough, my girlfriend works for a lawyer, so I get him updated and he says that he'd love to help. He lets me know that I saved my butt by writing that contract, as any contract worth over $500 is to be held up in any level level court in my state. I immediately get to work on my revenge. I remember on the side of this guy's car, he had a business logo and I took pictures of the damage. So I hop online, get to the Better Business Bureau to look up who owns this company, thinking that surely he couldn't own the business because he is such an idiot. I was wrong. This guy owns that company, and I see that he has about 12 one-star reviews, all in dispute because of his shady business practices, telling people it will cost one thing and then charging them 4 times what he said it would. Sound familiar? Remember when he said the shop may charge more than the original $2,403? That's right. He was suing me for $10,000. 4 times what the shop told him it would cost. Unbelievable. He was trying his same sneaky tactics on me. My lawyer takes note of this and we show up to court ready for war. This guy is sleazy. As we get there and all set up, he says,
"You ready to give me some more daddy's money?"
with a smirk. I guess just because I'm young and I drive a nice truck and I could afford $2,500. His lawyer gets up and starts trying to say this nonsense about me hitting and running and Brent barely got a picture of my license plate. So I tried to bully him into taking a deal for only $2,500 when the damage was clearly more than that. There were obvious holes in this story, and he really didn't have much to say. Just imagine the smile on my face as my lawyer lays out the printouts of our text messages and the physical copy of the contract, which was signed by Brent. His lawyer was ghostly white and looked sick. After laying out all the evidence, my lawyer pulled out a little hidden gem, the printouts of all the complaints we found on the Better Business Bureau and how he was doing the same thing to me. That was the final nail in the coffin, as the judge said he had seen enough. He asked Brent for any final statements and Brent said,
"I don't even have the 2,500 anymore. Can I just get that then and we'll be okay?"
Literally admitting to the judge that he had received my money and his story was just a load of nonsense. I thought his lawyer was going to strangle him. It was beautiful. The judge ended up ruling in my favor and demanded him to pay my legal fees as well as damages and lost wages because I had to miss work to be in court. The absolute sweetest part was that this particular day my crew was on a very high wage job and I was technically the one getting paid before I paid them out as subcontractors. This means I was to be paid $475 an hour, and this whole ordeal took about 5 hours. He ended up having to pay me almost $5,000. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. So was my revenge enough? So this scammer guy was not very smart. He signed a contract that said that he received the $2,500 and then pretends like that didn't happen, like it was a hit and run, and then accidentally admits that he did get the $2,500. I wouldn't be surprised if he was lying about the quote on his car in the first place, that it didn't even cost $2,500. When the scammer guy told the OP the price the first time, the OP says, "This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done and I take care of it afterwards." So just due to the fact that he was shocked that it will cost so much based on the minimal damage, I would just call the shop and say, "Hey, what did you actually quote this guy for this car?" If he ever even came in at all, because maybe the damage is only a tiny fraction of that and he can get back most of the $2,500 also on top of the $5,000 he got for missing his work. There are some scammers out there that are so sophisticated, so meticulous, that it's almost like it's more work than actually doing a normal job. But this guy is not that. He's a lazy scammer, and it's to the point where his lawyer is embarrassed about it because he was blindsided. I don't know what the legal term is, maybe one of you guys know, but in some cases I know that you can't actually bring in character establishing details that don't have to do with the case, or whatever the correct term is for that. In this case, that would be bringing in the 12 one-star reviews to show the judge. I know in some cases you're not allowed to do stuff like that, but here maybe you were allowed to do that and she just based his character on those reviews. So if anything like this has ever happened to you, submit your stories, or if it hasn't, what would you do if you're in this situation? Let me know down below. Am I the jerk for literally showing my dad how he behaves every day when he gets home from work? I'm a 16-year-old female and my father is 46. He's the breadwinner while my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She handles everything around the house like cooking, mopping, washing, laundry, etc. I'm the oldest and I try to help, but really there's only so much I can do while my dad just gets home at the end of the day and literally complains about everything, like how the carpet isn't clean or how the food is cold. As a result, I'd have to listen to a huge argument daily between him and my mom. It's exhausting, but honestly, I think my dad is in the wrong here. I tried talking to him to get him to see how his behavior is, but to no avail. So what I did was pick take a day off for him and pretend to act like him. I put together an outfit that looked like a suit and put black tape over my lips to look like a mustache. At 6 p.m., I went inside the house. I shouted, "I'm home," then sat down next to him in the living room and started kicking my shoes while complaining about the state of the house at the top of my lungs. He glanced at me confused, asking what I was doing. I ignored him, then started yelling about the carpet being dirty, the shower not being ready, the kids needing to be quiet, and so on. He kept staring while mom and my siblings laughed. My youngest brother kept pointing towards me saying,
"This is Daddy."
I then proceeded to yell about dinner and then berated my mom for not preparing it before time. My dad stopped me and in a serious tone asked me what I was doing. I turned to him and said, "What, can a man rest after working long hours?" in the most macho voice I could muster. My dad got the hint because this was the common phrase he uses daily. He went quiet and avoided looking at me. I stopped the act and told him I was trying to show him what he's like every day when he comes home from work. He said nothing. He just went outside and refused to speak to me. Later on, he went on about how I mocked him and invalidated him, that he does work hard and me doing this was disrespectful and invalidating. My mom said that it was funny, but also thought that I hurt my dad's feelings and I could have gotten the message across some other way instead. So, am I the jerk? It sounds like the OP isn't able to communicate how much him acting like this bothers her in the first place, so doing something like this is her form of communication to show him how he makes them feel every day. He's upset about his feelings being hurt, but their feelings are probably hurt every day and he's not listening to them. As some of the top responses said, she basically held up a mirror to his behavior and he didn't like what he saw. And that may be true, but it seems like he didn't even see himself in this until she said his catchphrase, "Can't a man rest after working long hours?" That's when he realized what was going on. Let me know how you see the situation down below and jerk or not a jerk and why.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.